Chapter 2190. Speedily leveled up 1. But the main event that would make him want to vomit blood had yet to come. With a click sound, he heard Su Luo closing the door for room number 10. Oh my god. I was right, that room number 10 might not be properly locked up. Looks like she managed to push it open through blind luck. But it's okay. She can't even swipe her token, so she basically can't cultivate. In the end, wouldn't she just have to run away with her tail between her legs? Lan Ningyan wiped his sweat-drenched forehead while calming down his anxiously beating heart. Feelings of satisfaction, ridicule, and mockery emerged from the depths of his eyes. He then stared at Su Luo. If it was any other ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't be able to endure his gaze. However, Su Luo had gone against his expectations, as she unexpectedly continued to move forward after closing the door to room number 10 behind her. Is she stupid? Is she really hoping to open the door to room number 11? That is utterly impossible. Lan Ningyan decided that he would wait until Su Luo came back to fulfill her due mockery. But then, Su Luo's feet didn't even stop moving after going past room number 11. On the contrary, she continued to walk straight forward. Lan Ningyan's eyes widened. She was in front of room number 12. Unexpectedly, Su Luo didn't have the intention to stop, and was actually proceeding to continue walking straight forward. At this point, Lan Ningyan finally remembered what Su Luo said before when she asked about room number 13. There is no way, right? Her goal is room number 13? Ha ha ha, that's the gravity chamber room that the city lord had used when he was cultivating. No one could enter it except for the city lord himself. Even the elders couldn't. Yet, Su Luo was now about to show a total disregard for her life by attempting to open room number 13. Lan Ningyan was brimming with evil intentions as he pondered. It was rumored that there was a special lock on the door of room number 13. If anyone tried to break the lock, they would immediately suffer a kickback. That was because such actions would be considered the same as an act of degrading the city lord, something that was equivalent to a swift and immediate execution. Exceedingly satisfied with the outcome, Lan Ningyan didn't even have a single thought of warning Su Luo. Just like a spectator watching a comedy, he proceeded to shoot a triumphant and haughty glance at Su Luo. His legs shook with his heart's exciting pounding. Obviously, Su Luo finally stopped in front of the door to room number 13, the gravity chamber room. Quickly push open the door, quick. Lan Ningyan was brimming with excitement as he clenched his fists tightly, silently cheering on Su Luo's attempt at opening the door. As soon as Su Luo activated the sensor using her token, not only would the token be destroyed, but Su Luo herself would also be turned to mist. Su Luo's small white jade hand held her token and swiped toward the door. With a bam, Lan Ningyan smacked face first onto the ground. His actions were extremely fluid and precise. He was afraid that the powerful explosion would affect him, so his evasive maneuvers were extremely quick. However, the door of room number 13 opened softly with a small crack. Turning around, a blank look appeared on Su Luo's eyes as she looked doubtfully at Lan Ningyan. What are you doing? Why are you lying on the ground like a frog? After waiting for a long while for the impending explosion that did not occur, Lan Ningyan loosened his hand slightly. Upon hearing Su Luo's words, he couldn't believe what he was experiencing and looked up. Standing right in front of him was a completely uninjured Su Luo, and the door in front of her was being silently opened. Number 13. It was definitely the door to room number 13. But then, how could it be opened? Lan Ningyan was dumbstruck as he stood there, completely baffled as he stared blankly at Su Luo. His eyes were wide open, struggling to process what he was seeing. He had been constantly warned that this was the door with the most stringent qualifications, constantly warned that no one could touch the door of room number 13, but what he was seeing right now had shattered his common sense. Could it be that all of the gravity chamber rooms in the front could also be opened? All of a sudden, a wild burst of happiness surged through Lan Ningyan as he flew straight forwards. Chapter 2191. Speedily leveled up 2. Room number 10, swipe. But he couldn't swipe it open. Room number 11, couldn't swipe it open. Room number 12, still couldn't swipe it open. In front of him was room number 13. Su Luo, seeing his crazed appearance, kindly stepped to the side. Lan Ningyan felt the impulse to charge inside immediately, But then he subconsciously halted. No. On the 10th, 11th, and 12th rooms, he couldn't swipe any of them open. This meant that the level settings were not broken. It was truly like this. As for Su Luo, Lan Yin's gaze landed on Su Luo's hand, and he clearly saw the sparkling diamond token in her hand. Diamond token? Could it be that what you have here is real? Lan Yin swallowed hard. Su Luo shrugged. Do you want to go in? Lan Yin subconsciously took a step back. How could he have the courage to go inside? With his identity, walking in there was equivalent to death, right? Lan Yin fiercely glared at Su Luo full of anger and ferocity, but in it was also a kind of undefined depth. If you aren't going in, then I will enter instead? Su Luo went inside swiftly, slamming the door behind her. Bang! A heavy sound echoed out. The door to the gravity chamber room was closed, and Lan Yin's nose was nearly knocked crooked. Lan Yin was at a loss for words, standing there as stiff as a piece of wood. He still hadn't come back to his senses. Diamond token. Diamond token. There had been rumors a while back that there was a little girl who had been personally sent to Purgatory City by the city lord himself with a diamond token in her hand. But Fairy Wuyu had absolutely denied this. She said that this was an extremely preposterous matter. But at this very moment, that exact matter was clear and without question. Right in front of him. Su Luo really had a diamond token in her possession, and the diamond token was real. Lan Yin's complexion went pale with fright, and his entire body shook uncontrollably. Su Luo's identity was truly terrifying. If Lan Yin had known about Su Luo's identity earlier, how would he have the courage to arrange a life and death battle with her? A life and death battle wouldn't end until one of them died. However, if he killed Su Luo now, wouldn't the city lord be furious? If he didn't kill Su Luo, then what about his own life? At this moment, Lan Yin was really at his wits' end. What should I do? Lan Yin was dumbfounded, his mind at a complete loss. No, something suddenly flashed through Lan Yin's mind. Su Luo's diamond token. Was it really real? If it was real, then how was it possible that nobody notified them? Since nobody notified them, could it be that Su Luo had coincidentally found the diamond token, and then purposefully spread rumors that she was the girl that the city lord had personally sent? Lan Yin was thrilled about his own discovery. He immediately took out his communication amulet to contact his grandmaster. His grandmaster was the 8th elder. Diamond token? Nonsense. 8th elder waved his hand, saying, Did she herself say that it was the city lord who brought her here? That she didn't, Lan Yin said honestly. Did she herself also say that this diamond token was given to her by the city lord? Also she didn't. Lan Yin thought for a bit and said, If the city lord really sent someone here, there's no chance that he wouldn't discuss this with us old men. Since that girl didn't admit to this, then it means that this diamond token was not given to her by the city lord, the 8th elder concluded. Because everyone already knew if Su Luo was really being backed by the city lord, then wouldn't the 10 elders be protecting her as if they were protecting their eyes? How could they allow her to be involved in dangerous situations everywhere? Therefore, that diamond token had to be fake. But Grandmaster, she can open room number 13. Lan Yin tightened his fist. Room number 13, ah, the 8th elder said in a very long and melancholy tone. That year the city lord once said, the fated person will be able to open room number 13 in the gravity chamber. I'm afraid maybe that girl and the city lord's fate are connected. Chapter 2192. Speedily leveled up 3. So then, Grandmaster, if I killed that girl, would the city lord? Lan Yin was most afraid of this. The 8th elder laughed and said with certainty, Don't worry, the city lord doesn't care about this place. Furthermore, the rules for life or death duels were set by the city lord himself. Back then, he even said that no one needs to hold back in a battle royale, even if they were to face his child. The 8th elder paused slightly before smiling and shaking his head. It is uncertain whether the city lord has a child himself, but with these words, there's no need to be worried. You just have to do your best at the life or death stage. Good. It was only at this moment that Lan Yin's heart could finally rest. After ridding himself of his apprehensions, Lan Yin sighed a breath of relief, though yet another bout of troubles appeared. Su Luo had entered room number 13. The increase in gravity for his room was only 50 times compared to the 130 times present in room number 13 that Su Luo had entered. Just thinking about the current differences in circumstances maddened Lan Yingyan to the degree of wanting to crumble apart. Can I still beat her a month from now? That little girl grew up in such harsh conditions present in the outer world. Yet she reached the 7-star commander rank at such a young age. With potential like that, Lan Yingyan grew increasingly worried as more and more of these thoughts appeared in his head. Lan Yingyan knew that in his current state of mind, he could not concentrate on his cultivation if he entered room number 5 right now. In fact, he would suffer a backlash if he persisted. Hence, he grabbed a hold of his master, who was currently using his communication amulet. After stroking his long beard for a while, the 8th elder said to Lan Yingyan, "What are you worrying about right now? So what if she can enter room number 13? How long could she even stay in there?" "What do you mean?" Lan Yingyan felt a sense of hope rising in his heart. "Wait and see. Within 7 days, she will be forced back to room number 4. Despite his sniggering, the 8th elder spoke out in an exceedingly firm tone. There were people who had entered room number 13 these few years, but no one could persist longer than 7 days. Good. After hearing his grandmaster say that, Lan Yingyan was immediately filled with confidence. It would only be 7 days. That amount of cultivation time was very limited. Although she might be happy and proud right now, she still wouldn't be my opponent when she comes out. However, Lan Yingyan had already developed a great fear of Su Luo. He steeled himself. During the life and death battle, I must know, had to definitely kill Su Luo. Filled with confidence, Lan Yingyan entered room number 5 and started to cultivate. On the other side of the communication amulet, the 8th elder half closed his eyes, while sparkles of brilliance flashed across within. Gravity room number 13. Right when Su Luo entered, her first reaction was, "What a great concentration of spiritual energy." The spiritual energy in this room was so dense that Su Luo was so elated. She wanted to scream and shout out loud. What she desired from this room wasn't only the increased cultivation of speed and gravity, but the most important aspect, which was this condensed and pure spiritual energy that would make people's hearts palpitate with excitement. She believed that none of the gravity rooms outside of here could rival the dense and pure spiritual energy present within room number 13. Instead of rushing impatiently into her cultivation practice, Su Luo proceeded to observe her surroundings. It was true that this gravity room was made to be worthy of the city lord. It was huge, being bigger than 10 football fields combined. Her surroundings were foggy, just like an overcast day, minimizing her visibility. The surrounding walls were made from a material that Su Luo had never seen before. It had a silvery white color, appearing to be some kind of mysterious alloy. It had a strange, abstruse feeling to it. Chapter 2193. Speedily leveled up for bang. After punching it, Su Luo was surprised that her punch didn't leave one slightest trace on the wall, showing how strong it was. Walking along the wall, Su Luo spotted 2 control levers. Time. Gravity. Time from level 1 to 130. Gravity was also from 1 to 130. Su Luo pulled the time lever all the way up to the maximum. Level 130. As for gravity, Su Luo didn't push it too far. After all, she was scared that she would completely be crushed in less than a second if she pulled the lever all the way to level 130. Therefore, she slowly and carefully pushed that lever up. Level 1. Level 2. Level 3. Level 5. Level 7. Dong. An invisible source of pressure surrounded Su Luo's body. Su Luo could feel that invisible source of pressure hitting her like the tsunami, pressing down on her like a tidal wave, and with so much pressure that she felt somewhat stifled for air. However, Su Luo's hand didn't stop there, as this was still far from her limits. Level 10. Level 12. Level 15. Dong. Upon reaching this level, Su Luo could only feel a sharp and intense ring in her ears, before her vision turned black, while she was barely holding back from spurting blood out from her mouth. With much difficulty, Su Luo forced the blood pooled in her mouth back down. Lowering her head, she discovered that her pair of legs were now trembling vigorously. Plop plop. Unable to endure it anymore, Su Luo's legs gave way, causing her to kneel down on the ground. At this moment, she was finally able to hear the vivid beats of her heart pounding away. Thump thump, thump thump, sounding just like the pounding beats of a war drum. In fact, she could even feel the blood gushing around her body, akin to a frenzied tidal wave. Using her hand to wipe her forehead, a bitter smile appeared on Su Luo's face. Covering her forehead were layers and layers of sweat, condensing into beads. Just a casual wipe from her hand made her palm appear drenched, as though it had been pulled out from a river. It had been a while since the last time she had experienced such a stifling feeling. Su Luo wasn't scared of this feeling. On the contrary, she was excited. So excited that she wanted to look up into the sky and scream it all out. That was because there was a sound pounding in her heart, telling her that if she was going to cultivate under this pressure, her strength would improve by leaps and bounds. Su Luo straightened her back and braced herself with both arms. Despite her trembling legs, she still forced herself to stand back up. Level 15 was still within her limits. Only by breaking her limits, she would improve at the fastest rate. Su Luo staggered forwards 2 steps towards the handle, and pushed it up once again. Level 16. Level 17. Puff. A jet of dark red blood spurted out from the corner of Su Luo's mouth, its red color being so striking it would shock anyone who sees it. Nevertheless, Su Luo wiped it away with her hand, before continuing to push the lever up. Level 18. Level 19. Level 20. When the lever stopped at level 20, dong! Su Luo felt a stretch of blackness appear before her eyes, her head turning completely blank, and a droning noise ringing in her ears. The pressure was so great that her internal organs were all squished together, almost to the point of rupturing. Her skin, originally white as jade, was now pocketed with red dots, as blood was being forced out of her blood vessels, which were bursting from the pressure. Her face had turned from flush to ashen green, before returning into an exceedingly pale shade. At this moment, Su Luo knew she reached her physical limits. If she continued any further, she would be crushed into pulp by the pressure. Gasp! Su Luo took a big, difficult breath, then sat down with her leg crossed, before quickly entering into a cultivation state. Su Luo could feel that her veins, blood vessels, skin, even her visceral organs were all being subjected to an immense level of pressure, all while fighting and breaking through their limits. Chapter 2194. Speedily leveled up 5. Feeling the uncomfortable stickiness of her clothes, Su Luo took off her skirt, leaving only a thin layer of fabric. As time passed, Su Luo gritted her teeth and continued to practice. If anyone looked closely, they would find that she was trembling, as her body persevered through the suffering. There was a pure spiritual strength surrounding her, protecting her like a protective film. Such a comfortable feeling. Su Luo let out a soft groan. Sure enough, under such heavy pressure, my strength will increase much faster. I hadn't expected to be promoted to an 8-star commander rank this quickly. It had only been 2 days. Su Luo was very satisfied with the speed of her progress. Day by day, time passed by. 3 days passed. 7 days passed. Gravity chamber room number 5. Although Lan Ningyan had been cultivating, his attention had not been fully placed on his cultivation. Instead, he had divided 3 strands of his attention to look out outside of the chamber room. As long as Su Luo passed by, he would be able to feel her presence. But even after 3 days had passed, Su Luo was still persisting. After the 7th day passed, Su Luo's footsteps still hadn't passed by. Lan Ningyan gritted his teeth and waited until the 8th day. However, what made him feel troubled was that he still hadn't sensed Su Luo returning to the gravity chamber number 4. Lan Ningyan's heart was like an ant in a hot pot, tossing in anxiousness, and because of this his cultivation speed was greatly slowed down. Contrary to Lan Ningyan, Su Luo's cultivation speed was increasing crazily. After all, 1 day outside was equivalent to 130 days inside. Furthermore, it was under such heavy pressure. Su Luo's progress could be described as traveling 1,000 miles in a single day. On the 7th day, just as Lan Ningyan's heart was filled with endless despair, a small sound echoed past, and Su Luo suddenly felt refreshed. This meant that she had been promoted to an 8-star commander rank. The corners of Su Luo's mouth raised into a faint smile, and she took out from her space an emperor pill that had been given to her by her master, a look of regret flashing past her eyes. Master had given her a great deal of emperor pills, but she had used many of them, so now she didn't have many pills left. Next time I see Master, I must beg for more. Su Luo threw a body-strengthening pill into her mouth, and after she had adequately supplemented her physical strength, she began to cultivate again. Her strength was constantly improving, but her physical strength was somewhat unable to keep up. If she didn't take this pill, Su Luo's body would collapse. The effects of the Emperor Body Strengthening Pill were very good. After taking one pill, Su Luo's physical strength had increased significantly. Su Luo slowly closed her eyes, and her mind entered into a state of cultivation. She took a little flame from the body of the little red lotus and absorbed it into her abdomen. Because the fallen red lotus had always been in an external state, it had been growing on its own and had not integrated with Su Luo. Su Luo's fire attribute was still the ordinary flame she had had from the beginning, which for her circumstances was very dangerous. Therefore, while she was being promoted, the most urgent matter would be to replace her original fire with the flames of the fallen red lotus. Under the control of her mind, Su Luo felt the faint flame burning in her abdomen. Then, it began to spin faster and faster, until it spun at a high speed. Chapter 2195. Speedily leveled up 6. This chapter is updated by Novelfree. ML at that moment, Su Luo had her full attention in the control of the wild fallen red lotus flame, stretching it thinly, before pushing it into the pathways of her meridian. As long as all of Su Luo's meridian pathways fused with the fallen red lotus flame, her original ordinary flame would be replaced by the fallen red lotus. This way, in the future, when she used her fire attribute, the powerful fallen red lotus would appear. This way, no one would be able to snatch the fallen red lotus away from her, because by then, she would be the fallen red lotus, and the fallen red lotus would be her. To start, Su Luo chose the thickest meridian. Su Luo wrapped spiritual energy around the fallen red lotus flame that had been compressed into filaments, and made it enter slowly into that strong meridian. Yet just when it had entered a little bit, her body started trembling. It was so painful. The unexpected pain instantly swept through Su Luo's entire body. The thin layer of sweat covering Su Luo's forehead became large beads under the heavy pressure, and started rolling down like pearls, falling to the ground with crackling sounds, like rain hitting the beach. This kind of pain reminded Su Luo of the heart-wrenching pain she had felt when her master forced her to train her body inside the cauldron. Compared to that time, the pain now was much worse. In retrospect, the level of pain at that time was just an itch. Su Lu gritted her teeth and bit her lower lip so hard that it was dripping blood. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably. Then, she had a moment of dizziness. Her sight started to fade away, and her complexion was distorted into a hideous look. If she were outside, the pain would not be so severe. But she was inside the gravity chamber, under 30 times the pressure, so the pain was also multiplied accordingly. Under this intense pain, Su Luo took sharp, deep breaths over and over in order to prevent herself from fainting. Su Luo felt that her entire body was bleeding. Not only her facial features, but the skin, as well as the internal organs that couldn't be seen by the naked eye. While Su Luo gritted her teeth to endure, she opened a white porcelain bottle with trembling fingertips. These were the Emperor Coagulation Pills, of which only a few remained. Throwing the Emperor Coagulation Pills into her mouth, Su Luo swallowed it in one gulp. She felt as if her bones were being scraped, and though she could bear with that pain, if she lost too much blood, she would become a bled-out and dried corpse. The Emperor Coagulation Pills were indeed top-grade pills that everyone on the continent prayed for. As soon as the pills passed through her mouth, Su Luo felt a faint warmth flowing through her 8 chi meridians. The flow of the blood from the broken internal organs was quickly blocked off. After repairing her internal organs, Su Luo gave herself a simple order. Keep going. Su Luo's spiritual energy enveloped the thin fallen red lotus, and began to enter her meridians again. The human body had a total of 12 regular meridians and 8 chi meridians. What Su Luo wanted to do was to push the fallen red lotus back and forth through all of them. Only by fusing with these meridians could the ordinary original flame be replaced. What Su Luo was entering right now was the Han Tien of the lung meridian. After suffering once before, Su Luo slowly figured out some ideas. Su Luo first infiltrated the Han Tien of the lung meridian with high-grade celestial spirit water. After it was completely absorbed, she wrapped the fallen red lotus flame with spiritual energy and slowly pressed it into the meridian. Chapter 2196, Speedily Leveled Up 7. This chapter is updated by Novelfree. ML Su Luo felt like her meridians were being scorched, and her entire body dripped sweat. Although this method was troublesome, it was also effective. Compared to before, the pain had been reduced a lot. Su Luo's stiff and tense body began to gradually relax. Her distorted facial features returned to their original position, and her entire body returned to its normal state. As the pain eased out, the fallen red lotus that had been shaped into filaments gradually penetrated Su Luo's Han Tien of the lung meridian, and it had gone up to 1/5 of the way. Under Su Luo's methodical advances, the meridians in her body were slowly soaked and merged with the fallen red lotus. Su Luo was cautious and didn't relax at all, because right now she couldn't afford to make a single mistake. Once she made a mistake, it could never be reversed. After passing through the Han Tien of the lung meridian, Su Luo felt a sudden shock all over her body. Su Luo had just entered the 8-star commander rank, but what made her feel amazing was that she felt that her strength had greatly improved again. At this moment, Su Luo just wanted to relax, lie down on the ground and take a good nap. But she knew that she could not. The instant she relaxed, it would be difficult to reach the current state again. Su Luo looked towards her arm. Then, without hesitation, she increased the pressure by another 5 times again. Boom! Su Luo felt all the energy and blood in her body rushing to her head. Her face flushed red, so red it seemed to drip blood. Good, very good. Su Luo whispered in her heart. True strength was always tempered in this way. She had taken too many shortcuts before, and now she had the increased need to perfect herself through real exertion of her body. After the falling red lotus flame passed through the Han Tien of the lung meridian, it began to pass through the Han Yangming of the large intestine meridian, and then the foot Yangming of the stomach meridian. As the days passed, Su Luo kept merging with the flames of the fallen red lotus. Although her strength rose quickly, in order to be able to focus on merging the fallen red lotus flame, Su Luo was suppressed from breaking through. Meanwhile, in room number 5, Lan Ningyan was in a state of anxiety. He was able to sense the situation outside since he had partly placed his attention on what was happening there. He discovered that, from beginning to end, Su Luo's footsteps had never sounded outside, which meant she had stayed in room number 13 and had never come out. This discovery made Lan Ningyan's entire self feel uncomfortable. He couldn't practice at all anymore, and wandered around room number 5 plunged into an anxious restlessness. He calculated the time. 20 days had already passed. 1 day in Su Luo's room number 13 gravity chamber was equal to 130 days. 20 days, that was 2,600 days, darn. With Su Luo, that vile wench's talent, what rank would she have been promoted to by now? She wouldn't have been promoted by 2-star ranks in a row, would she? Maybe it would be even more. But even if she was promoted by 2 more stars, it wouldn't matter. She would only be a 9-star commander rank, unless she jumped directly to the saint rank. Suddenly, Lan Ningyan's mind flashed brightly. He had been worried about Su Luo's rapid promotion, but he had forgotten one of the most important possibilities. She hadn't come out for 20 days in a row, so maybe she was already dead inside. Chapter 2197. Speedily Leveled Up 8. This chapter is updated by Novelfree. ML. Could it be that Su Luo was unable to come out because she really died inside? After all, Master said that no one had lasted more than 7 days after entering that room. The more Lan Ningyan thought about it, the greater seemed the possibility of his guess being right. As more of such thoughts filled his mind, the amount of joy in his heart continued to increase. until it burst out in a delighted bout of happy laughter. Good, very good. After 30 days, if she didn't come out again, it would mean that she had died. That would lead to my victory without even having to fight. Ha ha ha. Delighted with this sequence of thoughts, Lan Ningyan found it difficult to resume his cultivation training with the overwhelming mess he currently had on his mind. In the days that followed, Lan Ningyan became more certain about his guess. That was because he discovered that Su Luo had never stepped out of the training room number 13. As for what Su Luo was experiencing at this moment, she was gritting her teeth hard, as her entire body was rocked by trembles. Looking carefully, anyone would find that the gravity lever on the wall had risen to 100 times. Under 100 times the normal gravity, the painful look on Su Luo was being distorted. Nevertheless, she still continued to resist against this overwhelming pressure. By now, she had already merged most of the fallen red lotus flame, starting from the hand Tien of the lung meridian, followed by hand Yangming of the large intestine meridian, foot Yangming of the stomach meridian, foot Tien of spleen meridian, hand Shaoyin of the heart meridian. Under Su Luo's control, the fallen red lotus flame had already circulated through all of her 12 main meridians. For thousands of days and nights, Su Luo was immersed in this intense pain without a single moment of respite. What kind of painful path was this? It was utterly unimaginable to others, but Su Luo still chose to do it. Not only that, she persisted in doing so. After finishing the 12 main meridians, Su Luo controlled the fallen red lotus flame to circulate through her 8 chi meridians: Du meridian, Ren meridian, Chong meridian, Dai meridian. At this moment, Su Luo was already on the 5th, Yin-Wei meridian. The Yin-Wei meridian started from the lower jaw, passed through the right chest, continued down through the right leg, and went all the way to the inner calf to 3 Yin Jiao on the inner foot. This meridian is very long. So long, in fact, that it would send people spiraling into despair. Nevertheless, Su Luo gritted her teeth, and with a fierce pull of her hand, the heavy pressure went up by a full 10 times. 110 times the pressure. Su Luo breathed with heavy gasps, seemingly to relieve herself from the pain. But to no avail. The pain she was suffering was still there. If someone close to Su Luo were to see her in her current state, tears would roll down instantly from their face. That was because the weak and fragile Su Luo would truly break everyone's hearts. Su Luo seemed to be unaware of this as she had immersed herself in her cultivation training. At this moment, Lan Ningyan was no longer her goal. On the contrary, her goal was Fairy Wu Yu, the one who stood high and regarded her like an aunt. Since senior brother Luo used himself as a bet, she couldn't let down his kindness and let him lose. Thus, even if she were to die, she must trample Fairy Wu Yu under her feet. Time went by. Today came to the last day. Lan Ningyan's heart was like a boiling pot of chaos that could not be contained. Unable to stay put any longer, he ran out to guard the door of room number 13, as he wanted to see if Su Luo could get out of there alive today. At this instance, inside room number 13, there was a suffocating pressure in the whole room, because Su Luo actually lifted the gravity handle up to the highest scale, 130 times. Su Luo now was experiencing 130 times the normal gravity. She huffed and puffed as she gasped heavily for air, causing her breaths to be short and sharp. Chapter 2198. Stunning the whole audience 1. This chapter is updated by Novelfree. ML. A big brilliant smile bloomed on Su Luo's face, as gorgeous as a summer flower, because under the pressure of 130 times, she had finally completed the fusion of the fallen red lotus flame into her last meridian, the Yang Qiaomai. This also meant that she had finally integrated the fallen red lotus deeply within her body, and the powerful cluster of fallen red lotus flame had replaced her original ordinary flame. At the same time, Su Luo felt a tremor all over her body. A sound rang out. The aura that Su Luo had been suppressing from the start burst out at that moment. 8-star commander rank, 9-star commander rank, 10-star commander rank, saint rank, 1-star saint rank. Su Luo actually broke through 5 consecutive stars, reaching the 1-star saint rank in one fell swoop. This was near impossible across the entire continent, even in the genius training camp. The smile at the corner of Su Luo's mouth had not yet disappeared, because there was another clear sound. 2-star Saint rank. Su Luo had actually been again promoted to the 2-star Saint rank. Such a speed of cultivation made people admire, made people collapse, and even more, it made people desperate. Inside room number 13, Su Luo had spent the equivalent to 4,000 days of cultivation. But to the outside world, it had only been a month. In just a month's time, Su Luo had been promoted so quickly. Su Luo herself was also stunned by the speed of her promotion, and it took a long time for her to come back to her senses, after which she smiled foolishly. Cling! A sharp chirp rang out. Su Luo knew that her time was up. She had pre-stored 30 days' worth of points before, and now that the time was up, this gravity chamber had activated an alarm. Su Luo smiled, and after cleaning herself up a bit, she opened the door with a clear, refreshed mind. Click. The door opened. Lan Ningyan outside the door was stunned. When he saw a dry and fresh Su Luo, his eyes looked as if he had seen a ghost. He was so scared that he kept backing away. How are you still alive? Lan Ningyan's emotions were so strong that there was a tremor in his voice. Su Luo faintly squinted at him. Could it be you thought I was dead? Lan Ningyan didn't know what to say for a while. Hadn't he thought that Su Luo was already dead? Now she was walking out in one piece. Don't mention being dead. There was no trace of injury on her body. As Lan Ningyan looked at Su Luo, his eyes suddenly lit up. Then his trembling fingers pointed at Su Luo, as if he were convulsing. His throat felt like it was being choked by a powerful hand, and he could not speak for a long time. Su Luo stood in front of him and shrugged indifferently. Do I look like a ghost? Why are you so scared? You cough cough cough. Lan Ningyan choked on his own saliva. He stopped for a long time, pointing at Su Luo, and gasped out, 2-star Saint rank, how is this possible? Clearly, when she entered, this wench had only been at the 7-star commander rank. She was only a 7-star commander rank. Lan Ningyan felt that either the world, or he was crazy, because he had actually seen that Su Luo had reached the 2-star Saint rank. That was a difference of 6 whole stars. Just tried to ask who could be promoted by 6 stars in 1 month. Even the city lord couldn't. At this moment, aside from trembling all over, Lan Ningyan really didn't know what to do. Su Luo crossed her arms. She glanced at him, and said unhurriedly, Why? Are you afraid? Chapter 2199, Stunning the Whole Audience, 2. After spending 10 million points, Su Luo had been promoted by 6 stars, but Lan Ningyan had also spent 10 million points. Not only had he not even been promoted by a 1-star rank, he had almost gone crazy and fallen into the deep end because of his restlessness. At that moment, Lan Ningyan really wanted to cry. You can't be crying out of fear? Su Luo half squinted her eyes, and a sneer appeared at the corner of her mouth. In a battle of life and death, even if he were to admit defeat, it would still be a suicidal end for him. Lan Ningyan took a deep breath, suppressing his anger. Who said I was afraid? Aren't you afraid? Then do you dare go to the life and death battle arena right now? Su Luo looked at him with a smile. Lan Ningyan coldly snorted. Although you have been promoted very quickly this time, don't forget that I am a full 2 stars higher than you. And the further on you get, the slower the promotion becomes. Su Luo deliberately clutched at her chest. Oh, I'm so scared. You are 2 stars higher than I am. Whatever shall I do? The ridicule in Su Luo's words was extremely blatant. Back when they were in the magical beast zone, Lan Ningyan was 7 stars higher than Su Luo. And what was the result? Didn't he flee in embarrassment after being beaten by Su Luo? Don't be cocky. You used a trick back then. Lan Ningyan glared at Su Luo furiously. If you have the ability, then you should have also used tricks. If you don't have the ability, don't yell nonsense. Did anyone say that you can't use tricks? What do you have a head for? Decoration? Su Luo hummed angrily. Lan Ningyan instantly became so angry that he didn't know what to say. Although Su Luo's words were provoking, they made sense. One can blame themselves for not being smart and cautious, but one can't blame others for using tricks. Since it is a matter of life and death, Would you still inform the other party of your moves in advance and say, hey, you have to be careful, I'm going to use poison? The more Lan Ningyan thought about it, the more stupid he felt. Hey, why are you standing there like an idiot? If you don't have the guts. Who says I don't have guts? If you dare to come, I'll see you in the life and death battle arena in 2 hours. Su Luo said curtly. Fine. Lan Ningyan glared at Su Luo bitterly, then dashed out. The life and death battle arranged by Su Luo and Lan Ningyan had been made public, and so many people knew about it, but not many people would watch it because the people on the dragon list were very busy. But once Su Luo stepped out, that might not be the case. Lan Ningyan came out first. After he exited, he immediately ran into a few people outside. Because Lan Ningyan had paid 10 million points, they knew that he would come out after a month. But when they saw Lan Ningyan, everyone was shocked. What happened? Didn't you enter the gravity chamber? How come you were a 4-star saint rank when you entered, and are still a 4-star saint rank now that you've come out? Was there no progress? And his demeanor looks so bad, perhaps his strength may have even decreased. That was an entire 10 million points. Isn't that such a waste? Wouldn't he piss Fairy Wu Yu off? It's okay, Su Luo is said to only be a 7-star commander rank. Even though Lan Ningyan didn't break through, he can still properly defeat her. Speaking of this, do we even have any 7-star commander ranks here? Even the gatekeepers don't have this little strength. I do hope that Lan Ningyan ends her quickly, or else she'll lower our average level. Chapter 2200. Stunning the whole audience 3. The entire group of people were dumbfounded upon seeing Su Luo. What the hell? Who said this girl was a 7-star commander rank? Are you blind? Isn't it obvious that she's a 2-star saint rank? Impossible. I took a clear look at her aura a month ago, and it was definitely just a mere 7-star commander rank. I'm not wrong. Then what the hell is going on right now? Is her 2-star saint rank just an illusion? Crap. She's really a 2-star saint rank. What happened on Earth here? The person who had previously despised Su Luo for being a puny 7-star commander rank was speechless as he stared dumbfoundedly at Su Luo. Walking past the man, Su Luo looked back and directed a faint smile toward him before walking off elegantly. As the saying went, a beauty's smile was worth 1,001. These people were stunned by Su Luo's captivating face. Why do I feel that this girl is more attractive than Fairy Wu Yu? In the first place, she was already more beautiful than Fairy Wu Yu. Did your eyes finally start to work properly? Hey, now's not the time to praise how pretty she is. The current question is how could Su Luo be promoted from the 7-star commander rank to 2-star saint rank in just a single month within the gravity chamber? That's theoretically impossible, you know. Didn't they agree on a life and death battle? That means that they must definitely have gone to the life and death battle stage. Go, let's go and see the fun. Wouldn't it be a pity to watch such a wonderful match just by ourselves? Hurry up and inform your friends and relatives to go. Thus, all of these people took out their own communication amulets to send news about the matter to their friends. As masters, everyone had their own communication amulets, allowing them to contact people with ease. If it was a life and death battle between the rank 100th and the 75th on the dragon list, it might not have been a big deal. However, this was about the 100th place ranker on the dragon list, who had promoted 5 stars in just 1 month. Such a matter was more than capable of shocking the entire Genius training camp. Because this was unprecedented in the Genius training camp, it was more than sufficient to set a new record. The life and death battle platform was not far from the gravity chamber. When Su Luo arrived, Lan Ningyan was already on stage. Although he was shocked by Su Luo's promotion speed, he was nonetheless still very confident after coming back to his senses. He thought that since he was still 2 stars stronger than Su Luo, he would be able to defeat her. On the stage, the two people stood opposite each other as winds ruffled the corners of their clothes. Below the stage, many people were busily engaged in discussion. No one was more shocked than people in Su Luo's team. That was because they had seen Su Luo's strength before. When Su Luo was only a 7-star commander rank, she had already taken over as the leader of their team, as her strength had surpassed everyone else. Now, after having promoted so many stars within a month, they were really looking forward to Su Luo's performance. Fairy Wu Yu also arrived. Lan Ningyan didn't have the face to see her at all. It was his rivals who notified him. A layer of soft snow-white fur was spread on the hard armchair. Fairy Wu Yu leaned half of her body on it. As she squinted her eyes surveying the stage, 5 or 6 men stood behind her. It seemed that at any given moment, there would always be no fewer than 5 men surrounding her. At a time like this, these men would naturally take advantage of the situation to damage Lan Ningyan's reputation. Nonetheless, Lin Banli still had a bit of conscience as he said. Lan Ningyan had been heavily poisoned before. This might be the reason why he didn't make much progress this time. Chapter 2201. Stunning the whole audience for. On the contrary, the unexpected one is Su Luo, who gained 5 stars in a whole month. Have you ever seen someone promote 5 stars in a month? Such a terrifying promotion speed. Only our Fairy Wu Yu. The man's words halted. That was because he realized that Wu Yu was in a bad mood. At this moment, Fairy Wu Yu swept a gloomy look towards that man before turning to stare deeply at Su Luo on the stage. 5 stars in a month. Within her sleeves, Wu Yu clenched her hands into fists. This Su Luo had utterly exceeded all of her expectations. Before coming here, she had assumed that she was going to win this bet. At the beginning, she saw Su Luo like a little ant that she could trample upon whenever she liked. However, who would have thought that Su Luo had actually possessed such potential? With her supernatural cultivation speed, it was difficult to guarantee that 1 year from now, if she could reach my current level. In the beginning, Fairy Wu Yu didn't take Su Luo seriously. However, after seeing her supernatural speed at promoting, even she couldn't suppress the fear that slowly creeped up her heart. On the stage, Lan Ningyan was in a similar situation as he tried his utmost to hide the panic that was growing in him. Knowing him exceedingly well, Fairy Wu Yu could tell in a single glance what he was feeling right now. Take it. Fairy Wu Yu snorted softly. Then a light blue shield flew towards Lan Ningyan. Many people's eyes snapped wide open upon seeing his shield, while the men standing behind Fairy Wu Yu could not believe what they were seeing. Wooing shield. This is Fairy Wu Yu's favorite defensive weapon. Those who knew about it understood that in order to get this wooing shield, Fairy Wu Yu had risked her life to bring a group of men to find it from a dangerous place. However, why did she just toss it out like that? People knew that the wooing shield had to recognize its owner. If Lan Ningyan was to use it, Fairy Wu Yu had to first cancel the blood contract with the wooing shield before Lan Ningyan could be recognized as the new owner. Moreover, once Fairy Wu Yu canceled the blood contract, she would not be able to form a contract with the wooing shield in the future. Many people were jealous to death. Fairy Wu Yu really treats Lan Ningyan well. First she gave him 10 million points, and now she gives him the wooing shield. Why do I feel that Fairy Wu Yu is jealous of Su Luo, and wants to use Lan Ningyan to get rid of her? This also means that Fairy Wu Yu has already considered Su Luo her rival? This Su Luo is really lucky. What an honor it is to be regarded as the rival of Fairy Wu Yu. With Lan Ningyan getting that wooing shield, Su Luo is bound to lose. Who told her to have the surname Su? This surname is not good at all. On the stage, a burst of joy filled Lan Ningyan's face upon receiving the wooing shield. He was originally worried about losing to Su Luo. However, now with the wooing shield, all of those worries had vanished. This time, he would definitely make sure Su Luo died by his sword. As he thought about this, Lan Ningyan raised his eyes, looking at Fairy Wu Yu, and nodded solemnly. This indicated that he understood what Fairy Wu Yu wanted him to do. At this moment, one of Fairy Wu Yu's male admirers had already started peeling those crystal-like grapes and hand-feeding them in Fairy Wu Yu's mouth. Fairy Wu Yu gave a charming smile, giving a faint sign of confidence in Lan Ningyan's victory. At this moment, she seemed to be in a pretty good mood. However, Su Luo frowned slightly when she heard the discussion in the audience, and saw Lan Ningyan's excitement, coupled with Fairy Wu Yu's intention. So, what exactly was the strength of that so-called wooing shield? Chapter 2202. Stunning the whole audience 5. Su Luo's lips slightly twitched. Are you not afraid of dying? You wench, don't forget that I'm 2 stars above you. And not to mention that I have the wooing shield now. Why would I be afraid of you? What a joke. Lan Ningyan said with extreme confidence. Really? Then, let's see what you're really made of. After saying that, Su Luo made the first move. She also wanted to try her 2-star saint rank strength. Su Luo put her hands together to make a seal. And soon a powerful ball of light surged, smashing towards Lan Ningyan. But the wooing shield stopped it. Boom! With a soft sound, the ball of light that Su Luo had formed was swallowed by the wooing shield and disappeared without a trace. Su Luo was taken aback for a moment, while Lan Ningyan smiled in triumph. And there was a further burst of laughter from the audience. Come on, come again, I'm going to see how you Su Luo can crack the wooing shield. Lan Ningyan put on a tortoise formation with the shield. He knew that because he was being attacked, he was already at a disadvantage, so he had to take defensive measures. The wooing shield could absorb any attacks that were at a lower rank, and Su Luo was only a 2-star saint rank. Even if she was strong, she couldn't possibly exceed a 4-star saint rank, right? Therefore, all of Su Luo's attacks would be swallowed by the wooing shield, and she would have no idea how to deal with Lan Ningyan. Lan Ningyan was waiting for her to get exhausted. Then he would take the offensive. The fireballs were no good, but what about the Chengying sword? Su Luo stretched out her right arm and a cold scarlet sword appeared in the palm of her hand. Su Luo gripped the Chengying sword tightly and flew into the air. With 49 thrusts in a row, the sword gleamed leaving no trace, and the audience was dazzled. But Su Luo became more surprised. Sure enough, as Lan Ningyan said, the wooing shield had withstood all her attacks, and Lan Ningyan was hiding behind it, so she couldn't hurt him at all. Ha ha ha! Seeing Su Luo's furious look, Lan Ningyan felt very comfortable. And forcing her to give in, he felt that there would be nothing else that could make him happier. Su Luo, my wooing shield is pretty good, right? This strength you are using is not enough. Where did all that strength you previously showed go? Ha ha. Lan Ningyan was very proud. Fairy Wuyu held the fragrant tea, and took a sip with a smile on the corners of her crimson lips. She looked at Su Luo with the same scorn that she would give to ants. Ants, after all, were just ants, and had nothing more than a moment of pride. As long as Fairy Wuyu made a move, how would I be unable to defeat them? Fairy Wuyu thought that this scene was growing increasingly boring, and she was planning to go back to sleep after a bit. The direction of the wind beneath the stage also began to change. The people who first supported Su Luo also shook their heads. With the wooing shield, Lan Ningyan is immune to Su Luo's attacks and she can't do any harm to him. Yeah, if one goes down, it would be Su Luo, who will definitely get exhausted, and by then she will be sure to lose. This is a life and death battle. If you lose, you die. It's a pity that a genius of this generation will fall like this. Countless people sighed and regretted for Su Luo. But at this moment, Su Luo still had a smile as faint as a breeze blowing without a trace through the water. Lose. That word had never existed in my world. At this time, Su Luo calmed down and stopped pursuing Lan Ningyan. Chapter 2203. Stunning the whole audience. 6. Su Luo bent her legs slightly, taking a stance on the life and death stage. At the same time, she condensed a small fireball in her hand. What is Su Luo doing? Does she want to use that small fireball to attack Lan Ningyan? When Fairy Wuyu almost dozed off, the male pet next to her suddenly let out a chuckle. And so, Fairy Wuyu looked towards the stage. Su Luo condensed a small fist-shaped fireball, attempting to shoot it towards Lan Ningyan. The small fireball looked very ordinary. If it were special, it would be a bit darker than a normal flame. Did Su Luo really think that the small fireball could hurt Lan Ningyan? It was as if you were facing an elephant's attack, but using ants as a weapon to smash the elephant. She didn't know her own strength. How could I see Su Luo, who was like a straw bag, as my opponent? How could I even have been afraid of her? Fairy Wuyu suddenly felt that she had been brainless. Many people in the audience felt that Su Luo wasn't in her right mind, and Lan Ningyan was even happier than a mouse. Su Luo had really attacked with that little fireball. But before it touched the wooing shield, the little fireball was pulled back as if it were attached to a rope. Then Su Luo condensed another small fireball, smashed it towards Lan Ningyan, and pulled it back before it touched the Wu Ying shield. She repeated this multiple times, pulling them back over and over again, without touching the Wu Ying shield at all. The small fireballs that were pulled back were not destroyed. 1, 2, 3, many small fireballs were collected by Su Luo. Of course, no one knew where Su Luo was hiding them. What is she playing at? Yet, is this a life and death battle or a show? This is the most trivial life and death battle I have ever seen. Many people were discussing this. Since Su Luo hadn't attacked, everyone urged Lan Ningyan to attack. However, Lan Ningyan was worried again. He felt that, although Su Luo was acting mysteriously, she had to have a reason for it. He didn't dare to attack, and only kept defending himself with the Wu Ying shield. If I attacked, then wouldn't the Wu Ying shield become useless? While Lan Ningyan was hesitating, everyone else was dozing off, and Fairy Wuyi was lazily preparing to go back. Whoosh! Su Luo waved her hand. Instantly, numerous fireballs appeared in front of her. The fireballs lingered in front of Su Luo, densely packed, and there were hundreds of them. Lan Ningyan felt a little nervous but forced himself to sneer bitterly. Do you think these little fireballs can penetrate the defense of the Wu Ying shield? Su Luo smiled faintly. Maybe not, but it doesn't matter what you think. With a wave of her hand, hundreds of small fireballs began to merge at a speed visible to the naked eye. How could she have merged them so fast? Lan Ningyan was stunned, looking at Su Luo in awe, while his mind went blank. The people in the audience were also shocked. They may have previously thought that Su Luo would fuse only the smaller fireballs, but fusing was not a trivial matter, as it would consume spiritual energy. How was it possible that fusion could be completed in just a blink of an eye, as Su Luo had just done? It was a pity. They didn't know that, while suffering in gravity room number 13, Su Luo had integrated the fallen red lotus flame into her body, and now, her use of the fallen red lotus flame had reached the realm of her own will. Chapter 2204. Stunning the whole audience. 7. She was able to merge them together the very moment she wanted to combine them. As a result of the fusion, a big fireball quickly appeared in front of Su Luo. This oversized fireball was bigger than Su Luo's body, and it was still growing. At this moment, Lan Ningyan's face finally changed. Nevertheless, he still proceeded to console himself, thinking that it was all right, that the power of the Wu Ying shield was incomparable, and that Su Luo would definitely not be able to break its defense. However, right at that moment, a cold and indifferent sneer curled up from the corner of Su Luo's mouth, as she said lightly, "Go." In the next instant, this massive fireball, which now towered over 3 stories high, started to roll forwards as smoke spewed out from it, appearing like a massive wave in the ocean, surging forwards with majestic might. Lan Ningyan kept backing off and backing off. He had the vague feeling that these flames were not as simple as they appeared to be. Nevertheless, the people in the audience didn't know, as they proceeded to shout one after another. "What are you afraid of? It's just an ordinary flame. You'll be fine even if it smashes into you." Was it really not a problem? Lan Ningyan felt that his back was soaked with sweat, his whole body turning pale and powerless as if he had been fished out of the rain. At this point in time, the edge of the battle platform was already right up against his back. Lan Ningyan attempted to fly up, but he found that his feet seemed to be frozen on the ground, unable to move even a single inch. He turned around and wanted to run, but he couldn't do it at all. Turning around was a cowardly move to do on the life or death stage, but he discovered that he couldn't move his body at all. Turning his head around, he looked at Su Luo and saw the smirk of triumph in her eyes. In an instant, he understood Su Luo was the one behind this phenomenon. Defense. Now all he could do was to defend. Lan Ningyan rolled up his body into a tight clump while hiding behind the Wu Ying shield. At this instant, everyone held their breaths and stared at the Wu Ying shield. Everyone wanted to know whether the Wu Ying shield could resist the attack of this huge fireball. Very quickly, the gigantic fireball made contact with the Wu Ying shield. From past experiences, they knew that such a large fireball would be absorbed by the Wu Ying shield. But this time, just when everyone held their breath and stared at the Wu Ying shield with all their attention, they saw that the part of the big fireball approaching the Wu Ying shield was actually swallowed by it. The wooing shield was frantically trying to absorb the fireball. However, as though it didn't feel a thing, the big fireball's original spherical shape surprisingly morphed into a long strip, going around the back of Lan Ningyan to encircle him like a fence. A scorching flame, super high temperature, hot burning pain. At the corner of the battle platform, Lan Ningyan and the wooing shield were all wrapped in the big fireball. The only sight everyone could see was a large swath of flame, and a large swath of red. The sharp screams from Lan Ningyan, causing terror and panic to surge in people's hearts. Many people were stunned. No one had ever seen such an intelligent flame. Who had ever seen a spherical flame body turning into a firewall by itself? The IQ of this flame seemed to be higher than a human's being. It was very likely that nothing would bode well for Lan Ningyan this time. Many people let out a silent sigh in their hearts. A chilling glow burst forth from Fairy Wuyu's beautiful eyes. The anger present in her eyes was clear to everyone. She had already crushed into pieces the white jade cup in her hand. Idiot! There was no telling who Fairy Wuyu was scolding. Not to mention the 10 million points that had gone down the drain. Even with the wooing shield that was given to him, he still managed to fail to this extent. Chapter 2205. Stunning the whole audience. 8. Just when Fairy Wuyu was about to lose her temper, the fire on the stage slowly dissipated. The entire stage was covered with scorch marks. There was nothing left at the place where Lan Ningyan once stood. Even his corpse was burned into black smoke that had dissipated without leaving a trace. My wooing shield. Fairy Wuyu stood up and roared loudly. Everyone then came back to their senses as well. That's right. Where was the wooing shield? Wasn't it still absorbing the flame just a moment ago? That was regardless of the fact that its absorbing speed wasn't that fast at all. Facing everyone's bewildered and confused gazes, Su Luo shrugged her shoulders and replied, "Perhaps it had the same fate as Lan Ningyan." What happened to Lan Ningyan? He was burned into black smoke. At this moment, everyone looked at Su Luo with a very complicated gaze. Lan Ningyan, who was ranked 75th on the dragon list, had unexpectedly been defeated by Su Luo, who had come from the midstream mountain less than a month ago. Did that mean that this stinky girl was now ranked at least 75th in strength? At this point, deep shock had appeared in the eyes of the people as they looked at Su Luo. One had to know that everyone within Genius Training Camp was a genius, and were all blessed with great talent. It was very difficult to advance on the dragon list as the people who ranked ahead never stepped down, so the people who ranked behind couldn't jump up. This was like a surging tide, where everyone's strength was constantly rising, thereby resulting in the ranking becoming stagnant. However, that was not the case with Su Luo. She actually killed someone who was ranked 75th on the dragon list within such a short period of time. Of course, with Lan Ningyan dead, no one other than the 8th elder knew that Su Luo had been practicing in room number 13 of the gravity chamber right before this fight. If this news was broadcasted, everyone might not just be surprised but shocked to the core. Fairy Wuyu stared at Su Luo with her beautiful eyes. In an instant, Fairy Wuyu felt an overflowing surge of fear rising from the bottom of her heart. In just a month's time, she had grown to this level. If it was a year later, she had to be killed as soon as possible. Fairy Wuyu glared at Su Luo and made up her mind. Having come to a decision, a chilling sneer suddenly appeared at the corner of Fairy Wuyu's mouth as she took a deep look at Su Luo. Then, she flicked her sleeves and fluttered away. The men behind her fiercely glared at Su Luo one by one, before crowding around the departing Fairy Wuyu. Thus, Lan Ningyan died just like that. Fairy Wuyu couldn't even say a word, much less shed a tear for him. Su Luo looked at the scorched edge of the battle stage and sighed softly, feeling it was a worthless death for Lan Ningyan. Nevertheless, curiosity piqued her heart. Was Fairy Wuyu really that popular among those men? What exactly did she rely on? If the answer was her charm, Su Luo really didn't think she had enough to make that many men fall under her skirt. When Su Luo took this question to Senior Brother Luo Luo's face was immediately contorted. After shooting a deep stare at Su Luo quite for a while, he flung his sleeves and left. Su Luo. What exactly was going on? Was it because of the lack of women in Purgatory City? Su Luo wouldn't think so, even if she was beaten to death. Moreover, it seemed to be some kind of taboo for senior brother Luo. Su Luo stroked her chin and pondered curiously. In the end, Su Luo came to the conclusion. Could it be related to Fairy Wuyu's actions in bed? Chapter 2206. Stunning the whole audience. 9. Li Man circled around Su Luo, looking at her from top to bottom with eyes full of worship. Senior brother Luo gave Li Man an angry look. You don't hate her anymore? Li Man shoved senior brother Luo. Since when did I hate her? Senior brother Luo didn't answer. He just laughed, and the others in the team followed suit. On the trip to the magical beast zone before, hadn't Su Luo been thoroughly despised by Li Man? Wasn't it only until later on when Su Luo displayed her own strength that everyone began to admire her? Back then, they had already overestimated Su Luo and felt that her future prospects were limitless. But no one had expected that this time, Su Luo's strength would be so far beyond their expectations. Lan Ningyan, who was ranked 75th on the dragon list, had been killed by her, and there wasn't even a whole corpse left behind. This side of Su Luo was really eye-opening to them. Li Man had now completely changed her attitude, and become Su Luo's little follower. Her appearance when she swore that she'd defend Su Luo to the death amused Su Luo. Right, Luo, class will start tomorrow, let's go together. Li Man took Su Luo's arm and coddled her. Su Luo blinked. Class? Yes. Every month, an elder will come over to give us lessons. Not only do we have theoretical knowledge, but there will also be practical competitions. If you perform well and are favored by the elders, you may be accepted as a direct disciple by that elder. Before, Lan Ningyan was chosen as a direct disciple by the 8th elder because of his talent. Li Man explained to Su Luo. Lan Ningyan was the disciple of the 8th elder? Su Luo frowned slightly. She originally thought that it was only Fairy Wuyu who backed Lan Ningyan, so she hadn't been very concerned about killing him. But she hadn't expected the 8th elder to also be there. Su Luo felt that things were getting a bit tricky, because no master would watch his disciple get killed without batting an eye. Yes, Lan Ningyan was a disciple of the 8th elder, but the 8th elder likes to accept a lot of apprentices. Lan Ningyan was the least favored one, so don't worry too much about it, Luo. Li Man didn't take it seriously. However, Su Luo didn't think so. Although it is said that life and death are determined in the arena of life and death, and no one was allowed to settle any accounts afterwards, this mainly depended on the elder's decisions. Even if that was his least favored disciple, killing Lan Ningyan would still be like giving him a fierce slap to the face. If the elder was narrow-minded, then Su Luo would be in trouble. So Su Luo asked, I'm not acquainted with this 8th elder. What's he like? Senior brother Luo analyzed. It's rumored that the 8th elder has a good reputation and is generous. Since he particularly cherishes his reputation, he probably won't pursue this matter with you very much. Cherishes his reputation? Su Luo frowned. As far as she knew, people that were concerned with their reputation generally weren't very broad-minded. Who's coming to the class this time? Su Luo asked. Don't worry, it's not the 8th elder but the 7th. Li Man smiled and said to Su Luo, have you never been to a class? What the elders teach is their own experiences, which is crucial for our cultivation. It's very helpful, and it's not like anyone who wants to attend can attend. Oh, there are restrictions? It's not really a restriction but a fee. Li Man explained. Everyone who enters the class needs to pay 100,000 points. Chapter 2207. Stunning the whole audience. 10. 100,000 points to attend a single class? Why doesn't he just go rob someone? Su Luo was speechless. The elders also need points after all. Such a fee isn't very expensive. Besides, classes are only held once a month. Li Man said. But for Su Luo, who was extremely poor, it was still very expensive. Although she was holding the diamond token, the points she obtained had never been saved and were quickly spent. The points in her hand were probably just enough to pay for this one class. Let's go. We're all going. and the elders are likely to talk about the extraterritorial battlefield and the situation with the Mystic Clan. It would be such a waste not to go, Li Man said. Were there still Mystic Clan members in the extraterritorial battlefield? Su Luo's heart tightened when she heard those words. A long-lost name suddenly appeared in her mind. She remembered that her master had told her Yun Qi had entered the demonic path, and his strength had risen by leaps and bounds, and master wanted her and Nangong Luyan to be wary of him. It had been a long time since she had heard from Yun Qi. These days, both her and Nangong's strengths had risen a lot, but she still didn't know what Yun Qi's strength was now. If what master said was true, and the Mystic Clan would use the power of the whole family to assist him, then the situation was more terrible than she thought. Luo, what are you thinking about? When Li Man saw Su Luo dazed, not saying a word, she reached out and shook her. Okay, let's go to the class tomorrow. Su Luo smiled somewhat reluctantly. Not counting the 100,000 points for this course, she had to aim for 1,000,000 points, because she must understand the situation of the demons. Early next morning, Li Man knocked on Su Luo's door. Only Li Man had come with her from Luo Yichen's team, as the rest of them had planned to go to the magical beast zone to earn some points. Su Luo asked them to take Big Sister Wei along. She had the intelligence of a little kid, but her strength was very good and would not hold them back. The teaching class was held on the mountaintops. The towering mountains were endless. Its cliffs were steep and shot straight into the sky. If you want to listen to the class, you must go to the top of the mountain from here, because the class is held on the top of the cliff. Li Man explained to Su Luo. Su Luo raised her eyes and scanned around. It was still early at this time, but some students had already arrived in 2s and 3s. When they saw Su Luo, they were taken aback for a bit, but they still showed a good attitude towards her, smiling and nodding, and then leaped forward. The straight cliffs were tens of thousands of meters high, but they didn't use any tools to ascend, leaping up all the way, sometimes tapping the cliff with their arms and flying upwards with strength. It is worthy of being the top 100 students in the Genius Training Camp, since only they can do this kind of climbing. One must know how many times the pressure of this Genius Training Camp had increased compared to that on the mainland. That was the 65th ranked person on the dragon list just now. Li Man enthusiastically pulled Su Luo, expressing her excitement. The people here are very high-minded, so they usually ignore me. Good thing you are here. I wouldn't be able to beat the 65th ranked on the dragon list. Su Luo admitted. That's not necessarily true. But even if you can't beat them, it's only temporary. Who knew that you would be able to win against Lan Yingyan within a month? In short, now everyone knows that your talent and future are real, which is very remarkable. Li Man gave Su Luo a thumbs up. Chapter 2208. Stunning the whole audience 11. Let's go up and take a look. Su Luo didn't say much and flew up with Li Man. Li Man was exhausted. However, with Su Luo by her side, she did not fall behind. Even Su Luo was panting slightly when she reached the top of the cliff. Let alone Li Man. Li Man's cheeks were flushed as she collapsed on the ground, gasping for air. This cliff might as well have been a test. Su Luo felt that the monthly lecture didn't just teach theoretical knowledge. One could also benefit a lot just from climbing the cliff. On top of the cliff, they soon spotted a quaint palace up ahead. The old, quaint exterior walls had been worn out by rain and wind throughout the years. This place had seen quite some history. Let's go. Su Luo quickly pulled Li Man forward. After paying the points, Su Luo and Li Man entered side by side. Despite being located in the prestigious Genius Training Camp, the interior of the classroom reflected its exterior appearance. Rows of desks and chairs were neatly arranged. 2 desks were counted as 1 row. Although they arrived here quite early, there were already a few people sitting in the classroom. Being familiar with the rules and not wanting to draw attention to herself, Su Luo pulled Li Man to the corner of the emptiest row. Since Su Luo had just killed Lan Yingyan the day before, it was still fresh news. The people in the class glanced at Su Luo. However, regardless of the looks they gave her, Su Luo's expression was as calm as a tranquil lake, still and devoid of ripples. It made them become even more curious. That was because it was quite remarkable for one to have such a peaceful state of mind at her age. Just as a strange atmosphere suffused the entire classroom, a loud noise suddenly echoed from outside. Li Manman's heart tightened, her face paled, her small hands clenched into fists, and she glanced at Su Luo apologetically. "What's the matter?" Su Luo felt a trace of regret in Li Manman's eyes that seemed to show she was feeling remorseful for bringing Su Luo here. "It's Fairy Wu Yu." Li Manman frowned. The seventh elder is Fairy Wu Yu's master. Normally, she wouldn't waste time here listening to a lecture here, so it's extremely out of the ordinary for her to come here today. It was precisely due to her assumption that Fairy Wu Yu would not come that resulted in Li Manman trying her best to encourage Su Luo to attend. However, the improbable had happened, and now Li Manman was afraid that Fairy Wu Yu would bully Su Luo, causing her to feel extremely uneasy. Su Luo patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, she can't do anything to me." Li Manman nodded, though the worry in her heart still did not disappear. At this point in time, the clamoring noise had drawn closer, with the sound of footsteps ringing out clearly for all to hear. Soon Fairy Wu Yu, surrounded by a group of people, walked in. Today, she was dressed in a gorgeous fiery red gown, with numerous accessories adorning her body, appearing luxurious and majestic. As she slowly walked, the light outside the window seemed to add a layer of brilliance to her, as though the sun wasn't as dazzling as her. Fairy Wu Yu, who possessed unparalleled beauty, was like a dazzling pearl or the brilliant starlight. Wherever she appeared, she would immediately become the center of attention. Su Luo, on the other hand, was wearing a plain pale yellow outfit with no accessories whatsoever. The only ornament she carried around was the silk waistband tied around her waist, fluttering gently in the wind. She, at first glance, didn't appear very special, but no one could ignore her existence. Chapter 2209. Stunning the whole audience. 12. Contrary to Fairy Wu Yu, Su Luo's beauty wasn't only her outer appearance, but also from her spiritual aura. Seeing Su Luo, Fairy Wu Yu's movements came to a momentary halt. A faint layer of gloomy coldness gleamed in her gorgeous eyes. Nevertheless, she did not deliberately stir up trouble. Instead, a ridiculing sneer surfaced on her face as she flung her wide sleeves, and she sat in the center seat of the class. That position was reserved exclusively for her. If she didn't come, it would be left vacant. Why did Fairy Wu Yu behave so ostentatiously? Was it because no one could beat her? There really wasn't anyone in this class who could do so. That was because all of the students ranked 50 to 100 on the dragon list were all gathered here. With Fairy Wu Yu ranked exactly number 50, she was rightfully ranked first in this class, so no one can be better than her. Why did Fairy Wu Yu come today? Isn't she a disciple of the seventh elder? Is there any need for her to come here to listen to the class? Could it be that something happened? Haven't you noticed that Fairy Wu Yu is extremely hostile towards Su Luo? Looks like there will be a good show. A group of people lowered their voices and whispered. The lecture hall was not big, so everyone could easily hear the gossiping. Fairy Wu Yu raised her sharp white chin, and a cold smile hung at the corner of her mouth. Sitting like a majestic queen, she ignored everyone around her, though a happy glint flashed evidently across her eyes. This prophetic look clearly inflated her sense of superiority. However, the group of men around her continued to pamper her. Some gave her tea, some softly her back, and some massaged her legs. All of them hustled around, waiting on her like a queen. Soon, an old man paced slowly into the classroom. "Hi, Eighth Elder." In an instant, everyone let out a gasp. The person who came in was not the seventh elder but the eighth elder. Was there a substitution? This was unprecedented. Everyone quickly looked over to the corner, where Su Luo was seated at. The eighth elder's disciple Lan Yingyan was killed by Su Luo the day before. Today the eighth elder replaced the seventh elder's class and had rushed over from the Elder Association Hall in person. Was there any meaning behind this? Many people quietly speculated. Although Fairy Wu Yu didn't look back at Su Luo, the malice in her eyes was obvious. She didn't hide the sneer on her mouth. She already knew that the eighth elder would replace the seventh elder. This was the result of her interference, after all. At this time, the eighth elder had already walked up to the podium. Su Luo's eyes gazed toward the face of the eighth elder. The eighth elder wasn't very old. He looked just over 50. He was dressed in a blue robe and radiated a dignified aura. Su Luo's gaze met the eighth elder's and sparks flew. The eighth elder's eyes narrowed as his eyebrows creased, but he retracted his gaze. At this moment, Su Luo's heartstrings grew tight, as it seemed that her hunch was right. After Lan Ningyan was killed, the eighth elder now definitely held a grudge against her. Ahem dash, the eighth elder waved his hand, and the students went silent. Compared to the seventh elder, the eighth elder had always kept a majestic and harsh figure, punishing people without mercy. Therefore, when he waved his hand, no one dared to say a word. Today, I will teach in the place of the seventh elder. Please rest assured that the subject will not change. The subject will still be about the wars between the outside world and the demons, and the abnormal changes in the fire element, the eighth elder said tersely. Chapter 22:10, Stunning the Whole Audience 13. The eighth elder swept a glance over Fairy Wuyu, and then calmly said, as for the seventh elder, these few days are a critical period for his promotion, so he cannot be disturbed, let alone come out to teach. Wow dash, everyone exclaimed. Is the seventh elder going to be promoted again? So quickly? Although the seventh elder was ranked lower, his strength was still very high among the elders. As soon as he was promoted, his status would also rise. As a result, everyone clapped their hands to Fairy Wuyu in congratulations. When Fairy Wuyu was in the inner purgatory city, she had taken the third elder as her master. After entering the genius training camp, she took the seventh elder as her master instead. Faced with everyone's admiration, Fairy Wuyu smiled faintly, as if the person who had been promoted and reached a breakthrough was her. In fact, it was almost the same thing. Since the seventh elder was so good to Fairy Wuyu, wasn't it as if they were the same person? If it weren't for the seventh elder protecting her from the inside like this, could Fairy Wuyu be so arrogant? When Li Man whispered this to Su Luo felt her head swell with annoyance. The seventh elder favored Fairy Wuyu so greatly. In other words, the seventh elder had, no doubt, taken her as an enemy. Su Luo felt slightly embarrassed to cause the seventh elder and the eighth elder to pay so much attention to her, one after another. Soon the eighth elder began to teach. Everyone should have heard of the extraterritorial battlefield, but you don't yet have the qualifications to enter it. You are all below the 50th place on the dragon list right now, so you will only have the right to go to the extraterritorial battlefield when you enter the top 50. As for the extraterritorial battlefield, what is it? As the name suggests, it is a vast battlefield. How vast? Vast to the point of being endless. Once you reach the top 50 on the dragon list, and are still in the genius training camp, you can no longer maintain rapid improvement. Only once you go to the extraterritorial battlefield will you be able to keep making progress, because there are countless enemies out there who can provide you with more experience. Speaking of enemies, I have to mention the creatures there. In the extraterritorial battlefield, our greatest enemies are the creatures from different dimensions. You must all find this very strange. Where exactly did these beings come from? The answer is actually that simple. In fact, this blue sky continent where we live now is only one physical dimension. Within the entire universe, there are thousands, possibly even tens of millions of physical dimensions like ours. We are actually very small. To make a comparison, if the entire universe is a sea, then our blue sky continent is just a single drop of water. Wow, as the eighth elder slowly lectured, when it came to this moment, everyone in the entire class sucked in a breath of cold air. What? The blue sky continent where everyone lived was that small? As tiny as a drop of water in the sea? This realization made everyone's eyes full of disbelief and all kinds of shock. The eighth elder waved his hand. The reality is exactly this, there is nothing to be so shocked about. In contrast to everyone's shock, Fairy Wuyu was very calm. She apparently had known about this from the start. When Su Luo heard this, she clasped her hands tightly, and then smiled bitterly. If it hadn't been for the eighth elder telling them, she really wouldn't have known that the continent they were on was not the ultimate continent, and was merely just a drop in the ocean. Chapter 22:11, Stunning the Whole Audience 14. The eighth elder calmly scanned the shocked gazes in the lecture hall, and then continued. Rest assured, you don't have to worry about all the monsters from the different dimensions pouring into our homeland, because the material planes are not completely opened up, but are connected in twos. For example, our blue sky continent is only connected with the mystic clans. Isn't there a place where masters gather? For example, a place where the powerhouses of all material planes gather together? Fairy Wuyu asked. According to the legend, there is indeed such a place. The eighth elder looked out the window, gazing at the vast clouds and mountains, his mind wandering far away, and a trace of melancholy appeared on his face. Back then, there was almost no one who could get there. Why? Fairy Wuyu asked again on behalf of the entire class. That place is called the spirit world. The eighth elder showed a hint of reminiscence. From our material plane to the spirit world, the spatial distance is so far away that we can't even calculate it. Then we just keep walking, there will always be an end to even the longest roads. Fairy Wuyu said solemnly. But what if you can't even get out of the door? The eighth elder smiled bitterly. In front of us, this material dimension is like a big cloth bag that is sealed in all directions, and the only exit is the place where the bag is tied. That is the only weakness, but no one knows where that place is on the mainland, so aside from entering the plane of the mystic clan, we can't get out at all. Don't we even have a single clue? Another classmate asked. No, it's not that there are no clues. The eighth elder pondered and said, as long as you find the map of the secluded necropolis of the gods, by finding all 4 map fragments and piecing together a complete map of the secluded necropolis of the gods, you can find the exit that will connect this material plane to the spirit world. Map of the secluded necropolis of the gods? Su Luo, who had been listening with intent, was suddenly filled with excitement and almost stood up. If it were not for being reminded of this by the eighth elder, Su Luo would have forgotten about this matter. She had the map fragments of the secluded necropolis of the gods. She had them. According to legend, the map of the secluded necropolis of the gods had 4 fragments, but she already had 3 pieces lying in her space. One piece was from a long time ago when Su Luo sneaked into the treasure pavilion of the Su mansion, and found it by accident. Another piece was sent to Su Luo by Ziyan after breaking the Tianling cup of Li family in Yaoqi. The third piece was given to her by Master Rong Yun. In that case, as long as she found one more piece, would she be able to put together a complete map of the secluded necropolis of the gods? Thinking of this, Su Luo couldn't help but fidget. At this time, the eighth elder was still teaching about this puzzle. The whole class, including the eighth elder, did not know that one of the girls in their class had already accidentally collected 3 of the map fragments of the secluded necropolis of the gods right under their noses. The eighth elder continued. But no one knows where the secluded necropolis of the gods is, and there is no way to sense it. Whether it can be found is entirely by chance, and even more outrageous. Even if someone has already collected 3 pieces, as soon as they die, the map fragments of the secluded necropolis of the gods would be scattered to the corners of the continent. The eighth elder shook his head. So it is very, very difficult to collect the 4 map fragments of the secluded necropolis of the gods. It is said that, so far, there have been no more than 3 men who have managed to leave the mainland. Chapter 22:12. Stunning the Whole Audience 15. Standing right under the stage, Fairy Wuyu's hands were clenching her hands into fists. Spirit world. That place definitely might have even more handsome, even better virtuous men. She had to go there. Her beauty couldn't be wasted on this small little blue sky continent. At the same time, Su Luo's horizons had also been opened up, widening her perspective. Originally, her goal had been to rank number 1 on the dragon list. But after hearing what the eighth elder said, she was extremely curious about this mysterious spirit world. At this time, the eighth elder turned back to his main topic. In fact, this information is considered to be highly confidential, and people at your level shouldn't have access to it, but the circumstances right now are different from what it used to be. The eighth elder gazed deeply at the people under the podium. Your upperclassmen are all putting their lives on the line fighting the Mystic Clan at the extraterritorial battlefield. The few graduates from our genius training camp. All of them are also risking their lives for the battle. But lately, the situation there has been getting worse, and the rate of survival has been decreasing. What happened? Fairy Wuyu frowned. In the past year or two, the Mystic Clan has been united as never before, especially in this past year. There was obvious despair in the eighth elder's eyes as he said, "It is said that there is a new young leader in the Mystic Clan who's both incredibly talented and cunning. Many of our strong fighters have already died in his hands. With the rise of this new leader in the Mystic Clan, their strong soldiers are growing by the day while ours are decreasing drastically. If this situation continues on, it will be difficult to predict our future." The eighth elder's heavy eyes gazed down at the students. "You must grow up quickly to protect our continent from being trampled by the Mystic Clan. Protect our continent from being bullied by the Mystic Clan." Everyone under the podium said in unison, "Yes." The eighth elder was satisfied with the reactions coming from everyone in the class. But when his glance swept over Su Luo, his eyebrows raised. Because Su Luo didn't follow everyone in saying these words. At this moment, Su Luo's brows were furrowed, and her face was wrinkled into the shape of a little bitter gourd. Furthermore, her gaze seemed to be drifting, vacant. She didn't seem to be listening to him. The eighth elder felt as if his authority was being disrespected, and so he glared viciously at Su Luo. Su Luo seemed completely oblivious to eighth elder's furious glance, because at this moment her mind was completely focused on his words. Mystic Clan a new leader. Was he Yin Qi? What if he was Yin Qi? If he was really Yin Qi then? In the quiet classroom, Su Luo suddenly raised a question. "Eighth elder, do you know who the new leader of the Mystic Clan is?" Everyone looked at Su Luo as if they were looking at an idiot. This was the extremely prestigious leader of the Mystic Clan, the Mystic Clan's most powerful person. How would the eighth elder know his name? Was Su Luo trying to joke around? But the eighth elder's answer was entirely beyond everyone's expectations. The new leader of the Mystic Clan is called Yin Qi. The eighth elder calmly said, "Yin Qi. So it really was Yin Qi." Su Luo sucked in a heavy breath of cold air. Even though she had previously already guessed this, now that it was confirmed, she still found it difficult to accept the truth. How much time had it been? How could Yin Qi have already become the new leader of the Mystic Clan? If he really was the new leader of the Mystic Clan, wasn't he most likely extremely powerful? Exactly how strong was he? These kinds of questions were floating through Su Luo's mind endlessly. The eighth elder fixed his gaze on Su Luo, as if he expected something from her myriad of expressions. Chapter 22:13. Exultation, 1. But by this moment, Su Luo had already recovered her calm and indifferent state, so the eighth elder was naturally unable to tell that she had been shocked. He only saw Su Luo smile faintly. "If so, then may I ask, how does the strength of the eighth elder compare to this new leader of the Mystic Clan?" All of the students looked at Su Luo with complicated gazes. This female student was truly bold with her question. How was the eighth elder supposed to answer this? Unexpectedly, the eighth elder seemed very open with Su Luo, and he coldly smiled. The leader of the Mystic Clan. How is he someone who this old man can compare to? This girl, are you mocking me? I don't dare to, Su Luo said smilingly. Even though her face was smiling on the surface, she was shocked in her heart. Yin Qi hadn't been very strong, he couldn't be compared to Nangong Luyan at all, but he had become this strong just within the past few years? And now the king was returning one. Su Luo's brows furrowed even deeper. The eighth elder, however, seemed to not care about Su Luo and continued his lecture. We were talking about the Mystic Clan, but now we are going to move on to the main topic of today's lecture. The eighth elder stood in the center of the podium, fixedly sweeping a glance over the disciples in the class. The seventh elder had already set the topic of the lecture as the variations of the fire element. Hence, we are going to discuss that topic today. Everyone knows, among all the elements, people who possess fire elements are the greatest in number. As for you all seated here, everyone has fire elements. You also know, aside from the most common fire elements, there are also high-class fire elements. From highest to lowest, they are spiritual fire, mystic fire, and metamorphosis fire. Among those of you seated here, there are a few who have mystic fire and metamorphosis fire. With these words from the 8th elder, many people in the class subconsciously swept a glance towards Su Luo. For her to be able to simply use fire elements to kill Lan Ningyan, she probably had mystic fire, or even metamorphosis fire. Who knew that she was unexpectedly hiding so many secrets? The 8th elder also glanced at Su Luo, then continued. But if you think that these 3 types of fire elements are already the highest classes, then you are wrong. Dead wrong. The 8th elder's eyes brightened, and he became a lot more excited. Spiritual fire, mystic fire, metamorphosis fire are all ordinary ranks of fire. The meaning is in the words. These fire elements belong to the ordinary world. Even if they could be strong, how strong could they get? In fact, there is another type of fire element. Its power is enough to destroy anything. There are no words to describe how powerful this type of fire element is the magical fire. Magical fire. Everyone raised their brows. They had never heard of this type of fire element before. It's only expected for you to not know of this. The 8th elder faintly smiled. This is the strongest fire element ever created by heaven and earth. Its name is the fallen red lotus. It is the purest type of fire element, extremely smart and well hidden from ordinary humans. Regarding its location, there is basically no one who knows. This type of fire element seems to belong only in legends. Su Luo was again stunned. It was too much of a coincidence that she was attending this lecture today. Not only had she learned about heaven for all strong cultivators' spirit world, she had also learned about news of Yin Qi and the extraterritorial battlefield. Now she was learning about the secluded necropolis of the gods, and then the fallen red lotus. Why did she feel as if this lecture was designed specifically for her? However, no one could hear Su Luo's internal exclamations, and the 8th elder was patiently lecturing his attentive students. If you think that this fallen red lotus, the magical fire, is only slightly stronger in terms of attack, then you are extremely wrong. When the fallen red lotus reaches maturity, then it can even create its own fire world. Chapter 22:14. Exultation 2, the 8th elder said. That world could be so wide, so endless, so vast. It could even be bigger than the entire blue sky continent. That world could give birth to new lives with fire elements. There could be fire humans, fire beasts, even fire mountains and lava rivers. It is an unimaginable world for humans. Furthermore, it can create its own fire principles, even higher level than the dimensions of the blue sky continent. A personally built world. That was to say, one would be the god of that world. What a desirable thing it would be. Everyone was almost drooling at the thought of owning their own world. 8th elder, where is that magical fire? Exactly, 8th elder, there must be some kind of clues. If that magical fire belongs to the first few elements born between heaven and earth, then could it already be taken by someone else? Many people were so excited that they almost slammed the table. Su Luo looked at those people, then quietly looked down. Where else could the fallen red lotus be? It had long ago fallen into her pocket. But the interest of the 8th elder hadn't yet decreased, and he said, from the ancient times till now, no one knows where the fallen red lotus is. This opportunity falls on you guys, the young people, to discover it. The chance of discovering the magical fire is equivalent for each one of you. Having introduced the fallen red lotus, the 8th elder continued explaining the method of drawing energy from the essence of fire elements, as well as the formulas. But at this time, Su Luo wasn't paying attention to the lecture. Because she had received too much information during this lecture. Up to now, she was still trying to process it all. Suddenly, Su Luo's communication amulet vibrated, startling her. She quickly found out that this time it wasn't the green communication amulet, the one vibrating, meaning that Nangong Luyan was communicating with her. Thinking of Nangong Luyan, Su Luo was unable to sit still. At this moment, Su Luo's eyes looked earnestly at the 8th elder, straightening her back. She looked like an extremely studious disciple, but in reality, her soul had already flown into the space and was happily picking up the communication amulet. This time Nangong Luyan wasn't only sending a text message, he was calling her. Su Luo immediately complained. "Are you that busy? Why do you never reply to any of my messages?" Su Luo sent updates to Nangong Luyan every day, but he rarely replied to her. "Do you really miss me that much?" Nangong Liuyun's tired voice brought a hint of warm smile with it, transferring clearly to her side. In these situations, Nangong Luyan would always pat her small head or pinch her cheeks. But now that they were so far away from each other, he felt regretful that he was unable to do it. Narcissism is a type of illness, you must get it treated thoroughly. Su Luo lay on the variant red acacia tree, barefoot, and basking in the sunshine. With her eyes half closed, she looked extremely comfortable. "Ah, if you don't say you miss me, I won't marry you." Nangong Luyan was playing hard to get. "Hey, you say that as if I really want to be married to you. Take a look in the mirror." Su Luo was angered by his deliberate attempt at taking advantage of her. Nangong Liuyun's thin red lips were raised into a happy smile, and his handsomeness bloomed like a snowflake in the winter, extremely captivating. It seemed like he was enjoying Su Luo's angry emotions toward him, and the smile in his eyes lingered for a long time. "If you don't marry me, no one else will dare to marry you." Nangong Liuyun's smile deepened, and his jade eyes as deep as the ocean also carried the trace of a faint smile. That expression on him, that seemed certain of victory, was as if he was playing with a cute little pet. Chapter 22:15. Exultation 3. Su Luo unknowingly used an advertising slogan. "You really shouldn't be so calm. There are at least 700 million people who want to marry me, and combined together they could circle the earth twice." Nangong Luyan burst out laughing. However, Su Luo's next sentence made him unable to continue laughing. For example, "There is one named Yin Qi." Su Luo mentioned this name seemingly carelessly. Nangong Liuyun's sudden silence felt as though the whole world had fallen silent. Su Luo's heart was slightly conflicted. She knew that Yin Qi had always been a knot between the two of them, but she had initially thought that with his departure, this knot would disappear with time. Now Yin Qi had become a big and powerful leader of Demon Clan, returning as a king and blossoming amidst dazzling light. So this was not something she and Nangong Luyan could ignore even if they wanted to. Su Luo knew that there was always a restraining balance in the relationship between heaven and earth, and so she had a certain premonition. For Yin Qi's strength to soar so much in this short period of time, he must have paid a big price, and since he had paid such a big price to become stronger, would he let her go? Would he let go of Nangong Luyan? "Are you still there?" Su Luo asked tentatively. A cold voice responded. "Today, it was only when the 8th elder mentioned Yin Qi that I learned that he had become the Demon Clan king, but in fact, you already knew about this, right?" Su Luo's impression of Nangong Luyan had always been omnipotent and sure of victory. "Your elders are quite boring, refusing to give proper lessons, specializing in talking about these nonsense things, defiling people's ears." Nangong Luyan had a disgusted look. "I also think that he, Su Luo and Nangong Luyan, these two people, happily complained about the 8th elder." Then right at this moment, the eyes of the whole class fell on Su Luo. Li Manman's hand under the desk poked Su Luo, but the latter was only concerned with chatting with Nangong Luyan, and did not react at all. Under the gaze of the class, Su Luo's body sat upright, her gaze straight ahead and her eyelids motionless, as well behaved as a puppet on a string, but everyone knew that her mind had long wandered off. The 8th elder's eyes flashed with a cold light as he went down the podium, walking step by step towards Su Luo. Li Manman couldn't really allow Su Luo to get caught by the 8th elder, right? When the time came, punishment would be inevitable, and so she lifted her toes and stepped on Su Luo fiercely. Clang! Su Luo's communication amulet fell to the ground. In the next instant, her soul floated out of space. This was an instinctive reaction when encountering danger. Seeing Su Luo's eyelids move, Li Manman hurriedly gestured for Su Luo to stand up. Only then did Su Luo realize that she had become the focus of the whole class, and that everyone was happily gloating at her. When caught red-handed, according to the reaction of normal people, they would be embarrassed and blushing, right? But Su Luo's reaction was to remain very calm, and one could only see her unhurriedly stand up, her gaze calmly and elegantly looking directly at the eighth elder with a trace of doubt in her eyes. At this moment, the gloating in the eyes of Fairy Wu Yu was the most obvious. Hey little girl, isn't your fire element attribute very powerful? You won't be unable to answer this question, right? What question? Su Luo's heart was confused, but on the surface she pretended to be calm, the corners of her mouth containing a shallow and faint smile. Go and solve the question. The eighth elder's indifferent eyes swept past Su Luo's face. In all his years of teaching, he had never met anyone who dared to drift off in class. If Su Luo couldn't solve the question this time, she would end up miserably. Chapter 22:16. Exultation 4. However, this question. Many people saw the question on the blackboard and shook their heads. Use the formula to calculate the fastest speed to extract fire energy from a higher fire element. Such a question would require at least a ranking in the top 50 of the dragon list to answer, right? Among them, even Fairy Wu Yu would find this very tricky, right? But just now, when the eighth elder asked this question, Fairy Wu Yu directly stood up and recommended Su Luo, and the students did not object. After all, a dead friend is still one. For someone to come out to bear the burden was the best outcome. What to do? This question is so difficult. Li Man said in a low voice. If you can't answer it, not only will you lose face, but you will also have to go to the eighth elder as an errand girl for 100 days. You must answer it. Su Luo was about to raise her feet to walk away, but then stopped. 100 days as an errand girl for the eighth elder? What kind of rule was this? Su Luo really couldn't understand this. Su Luo's question immediately caused the class to burst into laughter. No way. Su Luo didn't even know about this rule? She shouldn't be so closed-minded, right? How long has she been in Upstream Mountain? A month or so, right? This is the first time she has come to the classroom to listen to a lesson, so she wouldn't know this. This is interesting. Su Luo killed the eighth elder's disciple. This is immediately pushing herself to the eighth elder to do hard labor for him. These 100 days, even if the eighth elder doesn't do anything, his disciples will not leave Su Luo with her little life. Although these words were whispered, the classroom was only so big, and so naturally everyone heard them clearly. It was only at this moment that Su Luo realized that the consequences of not answering questions correctly in class were so serious. How could such a thing exist? Su Luo's gaze slowly landed on the face of the Fairy Wu Yu, whose eyes were also facing Su Luo at that moment. The two people's eyes met in the air, and silent flames seemed to flicker with a flash of lightning and thunder, shocking the crowd into a moment of silence. Little girl, if you can't solve the problem, you don't need to go up. Do you want your sister to help you plead with the eighth elder? Fairy Wu Yu had a charming attitude that enchanted people. Su Luo smiled lightly. This was a good plan to borrow the eighth elder's hand to get rid of her, but she would not give Fairy Wu Yu the opportunity to do this. Su Luo pretended to be at a loss. Is senior sister Wu Yu very familiar with the eighth elder? Does the eighth elder follow the words of senior sister Wu Yu? Su Luo's big, clear eyes were black and white, pure and innocent, fluttering, as pure as an unearthly little white rabbit, confused and uncomprehending. She seemed to be asking if Fairy Wu Yu had an improper relationship with the eighth elder, but with Su Luo's pure and harmless little look, one would feel that they were overthinking and thinking too badly of the little girl. The crowd was collectively speechless. The eighth elder's face flashed with a hint of irony. Fairy Wu Yu had always been unscrupulous, but the object of her unscrupulousness did not include the group of elders. What are you babbling about? You want to die? Fairy Wu Yu roared at Su Luo. Su Luo stuck out her tongue innocently. What's wrong with you, senior sister Wu Yu? We're all students of the Grand Elder. Aren't you a student of the eighth elder? Why are you so squeamish about this relationship? Chapter 22:17. Exultation 5. Su Luo knew when it was time to quit. Seeing her like this, she immediately hopped to the blackboard like a white rabbit would do. Looking at Su Luo's back, Fairy Wuyu was so mad that she huffed and puffed with anger. However, seeing Su Luo standing still in front of the blackboard, a peculiar sneer curled up at the corner of Fairy Wuyu's mouth. "Vile wench, if you can't solve the problem, you are dead." She had admirers present within the 8th Elder's disciples. With just a casual word from her, crushing Su Luo to death would be as simple as crushing an ant. The whole class looked at Su Luo with sympathetic gazes. Although they could only see Su Luo's back, they could imagine how helpless, anxious, and tangled Su Luo's face was at this moment. Why didn't she pay attention in class? Out of everyone, why did she have to offend Fairy Wuyu? Look, wasn't she looking for death? At this time, Su Luo's eyes stayed focused on the blackboard as she was looking at the very complicated question. Do I have to solve this problem? Had it been before, this question would be really difficult for Su Luo. She would have definitely scratched her ears, cheeks, and broken into a cold sweat if facing the difficult problem. However, since she had merged the fallen red lotus flame into her body while training the gravity chamber room number 13, Su Luo had developed an unprecedented understanding and comprehension towards the fire element. It was a kind of an instinctive understanding, as though it was ingrained in her. With that, Su Luo picked up the white chalk, faced the dark green blackboard and started to write. Su Luo had never learned those formulas before. However, there was a kind of talent that was born with one's body, another kind of talent called the integration of knowledge, and another kind of talent called ascension to the top. Ever since Su Luo had merged with the first cluster of flames born between heaven and the earth, her comprehension of the fire properties had naturally reached integrated knowledge, and might have even reached ascension to the top. Screech, screech, screech. The tip of the chalk rubbed against the dark green blackboard, causing faint scratching sounds to ring out. Thought-provoking and elegant-looking words appeared in a uniform line. At this moment, Su Luo seemed to have fallen into an unprecedented state of seriousness, as though she was the only one existing in this entire classroom. More than that, it was as if she was the only one left in the world. Her surroundings were incomparably quiet in her ears, with the whole world becoming silent. Screech. Su Luo finally finished her line. She then proceeded to toss the chalk into the tiny wooden box with a confident stance. After that, Su Luo took her own sweet time to walk slowly and carelessly, taking step after step back to her place. At this moment, the entire classroom was silent. No one dared to breathe, as they were filled with shock from looking at the script written all over the blackboard. This handwriting is really good. As for whether it was right or wrong, looking at Fairy Wuyu's distorted and hideous expression on her face, with hands clenched into fists, you could tell a thing or two. The bottom of the 8th Elder's eyes were as dark as ink, as profound and unpredictable as the cold blue ocean. He looked at the blackboard with a single glance at the neat and flowing script, nodded slightly and said, "The answer is correct." Snap. The pen in Fairy Wuyu's hand was crushed by her own force. The 8th Elder turned a blind eye to that, glanced at her with indifference, and walked to the lecturing platform to explain to everyone. Although the 8th Elder explained in detail, most people still looked confused after he finished. When the 8th Elder explained for the second time, half of them still didn't understand. Chapter 22:18. Exultation 6. It was till this moment that everyone's gaze toward Su Luo really changed. What a difficult question. The 8th Elder had to explain it 3 times, but there were some people who still couldn't understand it. Yet Su Luo, a person who had only been in the upstream mountain for more than a month, was able to write such a complete answer, with not the slightest mistake being made. How far was this girl's understanding of the fire element? At the beginning, everyone was still guessing whether she would be sent to the 8th Elder to do bitter labor if she couldn't answer the question. Now thinking back about that, they realized how ridiculous the idea was. How utterly naive. At this time, everyone turned their attention to Fairy Wuyu. No one was blind. They could see that Fairy Wuyu had tried her best to recommend Su Luo to answer this question just now. Now that she answered it so well, was she actually trying to harm or help Su Luo here? Those people who already disliked Fairy Wuyu didn't bother to conceal the gloating smile shown from the corners of their mouth, with some of them even bursting into laughter. Fairy Wuyu was so angry that steam was about to spew out from the top of her head, as she turned around and glared viciously at Su Luo. She had never suffered from such a terrible loss, as she was always held up and protected since young. Su Luo smiled brightly at Fairy Wuyu. Her smile made the latter even more furious that blue veins popped out on her forehead. Su Luo then sat straight up, diverting all of her attention again as she started to chat sweetly and happily with Nangong Luyin. Seeing Su Luo in a daze, Fairy Wuyu wanted to make her answer questions several times, but when she thought of Su Luo's understanding of the fire element, she huffed and puffed, forcing that urge down. Regarding Su Luo's performance, the classmates secretly gave their thumbs up. Newborn calves were not afraid of tigers. This little girl was too strong. After being caught in a daze in the class of the 8th elder, she still dared to do it again? However, this time the 8th elder and Fairy Wuyu had both waved the white flag, and did not deliberately make things difficult for Su Luo. No one knew what 8th elder's thoughts were. As for Fairy Wuyu, she had already begun to think about how to take Su Luo down, and make her suffer a crushing humiliation. A short time after, the 8th elder on the podium finished speaking, leaving with a sentence. "The lecture ends here, we will have a practical class next." It was the elder who had the final say on how long or short a class would be, or if it would be divided into several subsections or not. There was even an elder who came up with 7 days and 7 nights class sections, driving crazy the students in that class. Tell me, how many sub-classes will the 8th elder be splitting this class into this time? Someone asked in a low voice. Isn't the 8th elder not happy with Su Luo? Maybe he will let us go back after the afternoon practical class. That's a big loss. We've paid 100,000 points each. It's not easy to save so many points. Who made you unlucky enough to meet Su Luo in the class? That girl is also very beautiful, but she is not popular and makes enemies everywhere. Isn't it because she is so good-looking that she was regarded as an enemy by others? She might be feeling helpless about it, right? Someone was finally willing to say something fair for Su Luo. Anyway, this girl is not forbearing enough to hold herself back under the ostentatious behavior of Fairy Wuyu. Look at it. There will definitely be a good show in this afternoon's practical class. Chapter 2219, Exultation 7. The practical class was not far from there, and they arrived within a few minutes of walking. This was a wide and spacious grassy area, and there were no objects blocking the sight when you looked around. The grass present was lush and soft as a mattress. However, there were 72 targets placed on the grass. The construction of those targets were similar to those used in archery, with the only difference being that those targets had in the middle a hole as small as the eye of a needle. If not carefully observed, it was easy to overlook it. Su Luo looked with curiosity at these strange targets, speculating on how the lesson was going to proceed. Su Luo swept her gaze around, and found that many people were similarly unsure of what to make out of those targets, so she guessed that this test was going to be conducted for the first time. At this time, Fairy Wuyu, surrounded by a group of people, strode over in a grandiose manner. Fairy Wuyu seemed to always be surrounded by people flattering her, brimming her surroundings with a queenly aura. Fairy Wuyu halted as she passed by Su Luo. Just like a peacock with an open tail fan, she raised her sharp and gleaming chin proudly as she casted a sidelong glance at Su Luo. Su Luo stood calmly, looking back with an ambiguous smile. No matter how much more powerful her enemies were, Su Luo would always face them with a calm and relaxed expression, neither humble nor overbearing, as if she wasn't even afraid of the sky falling on her. Every time, she seemed to be very lucky to escape a calamity and avoid a disaster. Su Luo had once again come into loggerheads with Fairy Wuyu. Not only did the onlookers refuse to persuade the former, a green glow of gossip proceeded to burst forth from their eyes. Each of them glanced several times at Su Luo and Fairy Wuyu, before lowering their heads to whisper among them. Seeing this, Fairy Wuyu snorted and gave a huge fling to her wide sleeve, before throwing a sentence towards Su Luo. This test, dare to bet? The corners of Su Lu's lips pursed. Does Fairy Wuyu like gambling that much? The 1-year contract has yet to arrive. So it turns out that you are afraid? Fairy Wuyu shot a provocation back. The content of the last lesson. Fairy Wuyu should have already heard someone talk about it beforehand, right? Su Luo replied. However, these words made more anger burst forth in Fairy Wuyu's heart. This vile wench was able to see that. Naturally, her master had already taught her, though she only understood half of it. It was only after reading Su Luo's complete solution that she managed to fully understand. When Fairy Wuyu thought that she was inferior to Su Luo, her face went tense. Do you dare to bet or not? Alright, since Fairy Wuyu wants to lose this badly, then please place your bet. Su Luo shrugged her shoulders while a look of reluctance appeared on her face. Compared to Su Luo, Li Man was standing beside her brimming with anxiousness, and almost unable to contain herself from signaling her thoughts to the former. This was a practical class, not a theory class. So what if Su Luo had good understanding in theory? In terms of strength, how could she possibly compete with Fairy Wuyu? Thus Li Man secretly tugged Su Lu's sleeve, signaling her not to be careless. How could this small action escape the eyes of Fairy Wuyu? She laughed out loud. Little girl, listen to your friend's advice, you can't compete with me. Su Luo smiled. Not necessarily. Young calves really aren't afraid of tigers. Fairy Wuyu sneered condescendingly. Oh, so Fairy Wuyu is a tigress? My respects. Su Luo cupped her hand. How could such a derogatory term as tigress be used to describe the holy Fairy Wuyu? Fairy Wuyu's breath was held in her throat by Su Luo's bet, up and down, so angry that her fists clenched tightly. Chapter 2220. Exultation 8. So, what kind of bet does Fairy Wuyu want to place? Su Luo replied with a faint smile. Fairy Wuyu's eyes swept to Lin Hanli at the side. Lin Hanli thought for a moment and quickly took out a bead that shone like a glowing star. 7 in total, each as big as a pigeon's egg, blood red, magnificent and bright. This was the legendary 7 stars pearl. Lin Hanli said to Su Luo. This is the 7 stars pearl. If they are inlaid on a weapon, they will make the weapon more powerful. Su Luo looked at the 7 stars pearl, while a bright gleam flashed across her eyes. This was really like when people sent you a pillow when you wanted to sleep. Su Luo was truly in love with that treasure. People knew the Cheng-Ying sword was Su Luo's best weapon. It was still an adequately useful weapon before. However, with the continuous improvement of Su Luo's strength, this sword had gradually been unable to keep up with her strength. Su Luo knew there was such a thing as inlays, but she had yet to find a suitable one to use. And now Lin Hanli just sent it to her door. She was naturally overjoyed. Hey, this 7 stars pearl is not yours yet. Why are you laughing so happily? Fairy Wuyu didn't want to see Su Luo's joyful expression, as if she were a mouse that had spotted some rice. Su Luo gave a cough and swept Lin Hanli a glance. Make sure to take care of my treasure, and you better don't lose it. Otherwise, when the time comes, you will be the only one I'll question. The surrounding people burst out laughing. Fairy Wuyu looked at Su Luo as though she was looking at an idiot. Did Su Luo really think that this treasure is hers? Dream on. This 7 stars pearl was so precious that even she, Fairy Wuyu, couldn't just take it out anyhow she liked. Lin Hanli risked his life exploring the Devil's Cave to get it, and gave it to Fairy Wuyu as a birthday gift. Fairy Wuyu narrowed her eyes and raised her red lips into an arrogant sneer. What about you? What will you take out as a bet? If you don't have a treasure of equal value, you'll be the butt of everyone's laughter. Su Luo laughed at this. When Fairy Wuyu said she wanted to place a bet, Su Luo searched up and down her space, ready to find any treasures that were in hand. The wind and fire wheels? This thing was not as valuable as the 7 stars pearl. The sky-piercing whistle? Still not as valuable. Intelligence skull or strength arm bone was good enough, but Su Luo did not want to take it out in fear of attracting people's jealousy. That's right. Su Luo's finger moved, and in the next instant, a pitch-black shield appeared in Su Luo's hand. Looking at this shield, many people subconsciously held their breath. This shield looked so familiar. Oh, Oh, this was clearly the wooing shield that Lan Ningyan used yesterday. In the past, the wooing shield was blue in color, but now it was black like ink. It was difficult to distinguish from the color, but the shape and power were exactly the same as before. At this moment, many people looked at Fairy Wuyu. With Su Luo using this as her bet, it was like hitting Fairy Wuyu's face, because this originally belonged to Fairy Wuyu. Seeing this shield, Fairy Wuyu was so angry that all of her orifices were spewing steam to the point of making her collapse from holding them in. What? Does Fairy Wuyu think that this shield is not valuable enough, and incapable of matching up to your status? Su Luo gave a knowing smile in return. Her words were a pun, which made it difficult for Fairy Wuyu to respond. Chapter 22-21, Sudden Fame 1. If Fairy Wuyu said that the value was not enough then, with her sending out this shield in the previous duel, why would she even carry it around if it doesn't even match her status? Fairy Wuyu was really frustrated in her heart as to whether this shield could be used as a bet, as this was equivalent to gambling with herself with her own things. If she was to win, she won't be able to win anything. If she loses, she would even lose the 7 stars pearl. Who would have thought that Su Luo, this vile wench, was that cunning? This shield originally belonged to Wuyu, and you just picked it up. You should return it to its rightful owner. How could you keep it for yourself? Lin Hanli frowned and reprimanded Su Luo with the tone of a senior. With such a good opening, all the men who closely followed Fairy Wuyu proceeded to berate Su Luo. Do you know you should always return other people's property back to their rightful owners? You dare to pick up things from Fairy Wuyu? Are you tired of living? Just say it if you want to die, don't be so subtle. Su Luo curled his lips with indifference. Is this shield Fairy Wuyu's? If so, please summon it back. Fairy Wuyu. Su Luo was at ease, as though she consciously wished for the latter to take it away if she could. Fairy Wuyu was infuriated. At that time, she had lifted the blood contract and gave the Wu-ing shield to Lan Ningyan. How can I summon it back now? Seeing Fairy Wuyu being stifled with anger, Su Luo shot a sneer. Didn't Fairy Wuyu give this shield to Lan Ningyan? In front of everyone's eyes. Fairy Wuyu cannot deny that, right? Lan Ningyan was my person. Fairy Wuyu said with a tone devoid of shame. No, on the contrary, Lan Ningyan's life was mine. Su Luo smiled faintly. The life or death stage decides one's life or death. Therefore I don't need to bear any responsibility if I reap his life. Do you think I'm right, Fairy Wuyu? What she said was right, yet also wrong. Although Fairy Wuyu was very reluctant, she couldn't point out what was wrong either. Since Lan Ningyan's life was mine, it could be proved by the same reason that this wooing shield naturally belongs to me. Do you all have any further objections? Su Luo swept an indifferent gaze across her surroundings. There was silence all around. Fairy Wuyu had already lost halfway even before the start of the gamble. Do you dare to bet? Su Luo used the same provocative technique on Fairy Wuyu. She was bound to win the 7 stars pearl. Fairy Wuyu sneered. Since you dare, why couldn't this fairy? Let's bet. In truth, she was forcefully suppressing her anger back down. Because even if she were to win, she would only win back her own item. She also knew that Su Luo had taken out this shield not just for the sole reason to piss her off. What Su Luo said just now was plain and clear for all to understand. She had taken Lan Ningyan's life without paying any price. Those words Su Luo said were meant for everyone. In fact, even the 8th elder could hear what she meant. With her speaking this matter plainly and clearly, even the 8th elder would have to consider his words if he were to speak out. Fairy Wuyu looked at Su Luo's eyes and noticed they were sparkling with a chilling glow. She thought Su Luo was just a tiny weak ant, but who knew that she was, in fact, a stinging bee? Nevertheless, it was really hateful that Su Luo put her in a disadvantageous situation. Therefore, Fairy Wuyu made up her mind. She would teach Su Luo, this vile wench, a good lesson, and let her see how great she was. In front of everyone, there was no need to look for witnesses. Thus the two parties agreed on their bet. At this moment, the 8th elder arrived, walking at a leisurely pace. Seeing that everyone was already present, the 8th elder didn't waste any words and announced directly, See these targets placed in the shape of a picture? What you have to do is very simple, is to pass through the target with a stroke. Chapter 2222, Sudden Fame 2. Eighth Elder, what do you mean by penetrating all targets with one shot? Everyone, including Fairy Wuyu, was at a loss, causing them to raise questions one after the other. A mysterious light flashed through the eyes of the Eighth Elder as he pointed at the targets and said, "To be more specific, you all have to use the method of quickly extracting flame energy that you all have learned in class just now, to form the energy into filaments and penetrate these targets. However, do note that the filamentous flame energy is like a pen. You can use this pen to draw all the pictures based on the figures I put out without removing your hands. However, you cannot go through the same line that you've drawn." Everyone only had a smattering of understanding after the elder's explanation, but Su Luo had managed to comprehend all of it immediately. Hey, wasn't this a one-stroke puzzle game that was once popular in modern times? The game would get more difficult as the stages progressed, coupled with something like 2 lines or so. The Eighth Elder swept an indifferent gaze across the class. Does everyone understand? The sound of everyone's reply was low, lacking confidence. Contrasting with everyone else was Fairy Wuyu. At that moment, her face was filled with a beaming smile that was bursting with confidence. When she looked at Su Luo, her eyes were full of provocation. Su Luo smiled faintly and ignored her. Fairy Wuyu snorted coldly. "You wench, you'd better not cry when you suffer an utterly miserable loss. Then how about letting our Fairy Wuyu give a demonstration to all of us, so we can see how many targets Fairy Wuyu can pass through?" Each target was equivalent to a point in a drawing. Su Luo looked at the picture set by the Eighth Elder. The pictures put out by the Eighth Elder were really not simple. The last few strokes of those drawings, which were the equivalent of the last few passes, were of extremely high difficulty. There were a total of 72 points here. God knew how many passes Fairy Wuyu could hold on through. Fairy Wuyu walked forward, and her appearance attracted the attention of the audience. She silently calculated the figures and numbers on the next court. After pondering for a while, everyone looked on as she stepped down and condensed her spiritual energy into her dantian. As she waved her hands, a bright yellow flame appeared in her right palm. In actuality, there were 2 points being tested in this assessment. The first point was to extract the flame energy and draw it into a filament shape. The second point was to control the filamentary fire energy to pass through the targets with precise calculations. As the placement of the targets wasn't arranged in accordance with a pattern, how difficult would it be to make it in one go and pass it with one stroke? At this time, everyone's eyes were focused on the flame in Fairy Wuyu's palm. Through energy compression, the flame was stretched, turning slender and appearing just like dough being stretched and pulled to form noodles. However, because the whole of the target was really too small, only the size of the eye of a needle, Fairy Wuyu was still constantly drawing the flames thinner like a wire. Soon, the flame became thinner than a thread of silk, before proceeding to pierce through the targets. A human form started to appear from the targets Fairy Wuyu had passed through. There was a head and neck, a body, hands, and legs. In this case, where should she start? Not only Fairy Wuyu, but the other people watching were also quickly thinking about this issue, pointing to the human-shaped target one by one, calculating silently in their hearts as they did. However, from the look of their frowning brows and furrowed foreheads, all of them seemed to be unable to come up with any good solutions. That you're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.